Okay, we have the honor of Chris Langdon. Thank you so much. One of the highest IQs in the world, higher than Einstein. I cannot imagine how your brain thinks every day, especially about other people around you. And you're the author of Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe. We just had Donald Hoffman in, and boy, he blew my mind.
Yeah, Hoffman's actually a pretty smart guy. He's got this GUI, or I think he calls it MUI theory, and he's got a GUI. You know what a GUI is? It's a
Yeah.
graphic user interface. So, but he doesn't have any place to stick the graphic user interface. Okay, it takes a computer system. Okay, so you've got to model reality as a simulation in order to do that. You've got to model reality in some way analogous to a the Matrix, for example. Okay, and Donald doesn't have that. He's been working on it for a while. Like I say, he's a smart guy. He's got some collaborators, but he's got like the same old approach to it that a lot of other people have. There are a couple of theories of consciousness out now that are a little bit slanted toward computation theory and that kind of thing, but this is a little bit above that. Now, there's another interview that I did a while ago in which I think Donald Hoffman has been interviewed by that interviewer as well recently, and I just don't think he's catching on. I'm not exactly one of the club in academia. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So Hoffman probably has no idea of what I'm doing. Right? He's not going to hear about me through academia. That's a grapevine. You see, and I'm not in that grapevine. That's if you want to talk about a closed club that locks the door against any outsider, academia is it. I mean, it's the worst thing going in that respect. So Donald's kind of stuck in the middle of that. So that's where he's at on that. So although I would certainly hope that someday he will find out what kind of system it is he needs to stick his GUI into.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
Now, with what you do, and when I was reading through it, you can ask him. I was all excited because this is my thing. I've gone down this rabbit hole for the last 6 months, hoping that there's actual UFOs and everything else. So when we talk about reality, I know. Well, the government blew it. They blew it with too much of this now. I had hope, but
they've blown it in every conceivable way.
Yeah, every bit of hope I had is now gone. But what's your theory with that? What's your theory on reality? And then do you think Hoffman's right as far as this is an interface of some sort?
Well, yes, Hoffman's 100% correct. We have perceptions. In some ways, those perceptions don't align with the logic that we think has to be there in order for those perceptions to arise. Right? No, he will show you optical illusions. You can see optical illusions where the brain is actually adding data into whatever the input is and being misled in certain respects. Hoffman's point is that it's got to be adaptive. Okay, the reason that something like that survives, that you get this kind of mutated perception, is that it has adaptive value. So it adds to the fitness of the organism.
With that, what he's saying is that it's like everybody's born with meta glasses on, and then when you take them off, who knows what's outside of there, that there is no space and time, that conscience creates space and time. And then in
consciousness,
yeah. And you do agree with that?
To a certain extent, yes, but I can actually go into the nuts and bolts of it, whereas he can't.
Go into the nuts and bolts of it if you can.
Well, he's talking about space-time. Space-time has a certain definition. Basically, what it is a sequence of states. We can't discern anything in space-time without actually identifying states. This means that the way we interface with space-time, it's nothing but a series of snapshots. It's like the old video reels, video cameras. Yeah. You had strips of film with frames on them. Okay, so it's one frame after another, and we get the illusion of motion. When you try to build a manifold, a medium of reality, and that's what space-time is supposed to be, you find that you have problems with continuity. So it's got to be this kind of frame after frame after frame. Now, when you have frame after frame after frame, you're not seeing the transitions between the frames. Okay, those are your intervals. Those are your state transformations. It takes a whole extension of the space-time manifold in order to accommodate those intervals of those transformations. Okay, and this is the kind of thing that most people who deal with space-time have no idea. They don't know what a medium is. They don't know how it works, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, is that because they're too just ingrained in whatever philosophy they had studied or book they studied for 30 years? Even though they know, say, Chris's theory is 100% accurate, I'm not going to go against the grain because I've put 30 years into this.
Yeah, it's something like that. Basically, academia used to be about education. Now it's about education, indoctrination, and social engineering. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of indoctrination that goes in. Now, when you're a guy, if you're in a mathematics or physics curriculum or something like that, it's hard. You got to work your butt off. You got to solve a lot of problems. They're giving you a lot of work to do, and these guys get in there. And meanwhile, as they do these problems and are made into slaves by their thesis advisors and so forth, right? They kind of fall into that indoctrination, and it's a mental model. They build mental models. The mental models they are using to solve their problems are the ones that they use. They become ingrained, and pretty soon these guys can't escape. They can't imagine what else there could possibly be besides what they're dealing with. In the case of the space-time manifold and even the classical manifold of classical physics, they're dealing with a classical manifold, which is the real manifold, right? Usually it's an R with an exponent n up top. N is the dimensionality of the manifold, right? It's just a coordinate space. It's a Cartesian coordinate space, right? You got 3 coordinates, x, y, z, and then if you want to turn it into space-time, then you add a 4th coordinate, which is time. Okay, this is the way they build that. That doesn't work for really modeling the dynamics of a space.
Right, because now, there's we made time, right? Because we made time. So how would that work? We made time.
Well, it works because to a certain extent, time has to align with physical dimensions of space. Otherwise, we can't see anything move. We can't see anything change. Yeah. So because time aligns with the physical dimensions of space, it can, to a certain extent, be treated as a spatial dimension, which is what physicists are doing when they add a 4th dimension to the manifold, right? And that way they get a 4-dimensional manifold, pseudo-Riemannian manifold, and that is space-time as a physicist deals with.
Wow.
Right. Okay. But the problem is, once again, that is Rn. That is a manifold that doesn't work. The manifold shuts itself down because its points are cuts. They're not actual points, actual things that exist in the manifold. They're discontinuities. They're actual cuts in the manifold. And when you add all those cuts together, guess what you get?
Nothing.
Who's saying?
Yeah.
There's nothing there. There's nothing there. You add a bunch of zeros up, no matter how many times you add 0 to itself, all you get is 0. Right. So these guys, I mean, Lord knows, and most of them, of course, are highly trained in calculus. You want to get through, math in college, especially in a curriculum like physics, you need at least 2 years of hardcore calculus in order to do that. And these calculus instructors have been telling people for years, well, we can use the Cauchy-Weierstrass method, and just have these limit points. And then we have infinite converging series that approach the limit points. And we use this epsilon delta relationship to prove that if you get close enough to one of these limit points, then there's always a value of your function that is within that. But you never get to the limit.
Right.
These guys never actually reach the limit. That's why it's called a limit. It's a cut. Yeah. It's actually an actual hole in the manifold, so they can't get there. Right. And they've forgotten about this, and they say, well, nevertheless, we have dynamics, and things are moving from one point to another. It's exactly what you cannot do in a real manifold.
Wow.
So you have to, if you want to really understand what's going on, then you've got to change that to something else. And that's what the CTMU contains, something called a conspansive manifold that is designed to do that.
So, Chris, I wanted to ask, why is it that very intelligent people that have very good journalistic writings, like you have a book coming out soon, why is Substack the choice of platform to write such type of things?
Well, Tommy, it's like this. You get deplatformed any place else. Most people who are on Substack were originally on something like Patreon. I mean, this is I hate to say this. I don't know what your legal constraints are,
Nothing.
But Patreon deplatformed us for no reason whatsoever and stole $6,000 from us. And that's when we went to Substack.
They deplatformed you for this kind of stuff?
No, they wouldn't even tell me what they deplatformed me for.
Holy shit.
There was never an explanation. We tried to get an explanation out of Patreon for why that, and we were actually working our way up. We had a good following on Patreon. Boom.
Wow.
And we say, well, what happened? Was there anything wrong? Up yours. You're done.
Wow.
And that's it.
Wow.
That's what these people do. I mean, they're disgusting. I mean, I can't stand these people anymore. Anyway, Substack hasn't pulled that on me yet. So until it does, Substack it is.
That's a new ringer. I had never heard that one before. Wow.
Oh,
It's just this worsen-
and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go hire a lawyer and you can go to court and you can go through the motions. And you know what they say, you can't beat the ride, right? You know, paying all that money, shelling out to a lawyer every day, it will kill you one way or the other. So most people don't fight it.
Right,
They
by
just walk
the time
away.
you're done suing them, you have you spent all the money that you could have made from it, you lost. And they're going to win anyway.
Yeah, and you know, many years sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've been through that before. We've had like, you know, 2 or 3 lawsuits, which I had to handle. I had to write the briefs and all that jazz myself, and it takes a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
Right. I always win, but it takes time to do that.
Right.
You actually got to. I mean, and there's a lot of, you know, courtroom protocol that you know, unless you have a law degree, you don't know all of these things. So you have to hire a lawyer to submit your briefs and so forth, and this, you know, leads to a great expenditure of time.
I just can't believe over this.
Yeah.
Out of all things, well, obviously you're onto something they don't want other people to know.
Yep.
There you go.
Well, yeah. It's basically I say what I want to when I want to say it. It's as simple as that. I mean, there are certain things that you can't really talk about without endangering your freedom of expression. In other words, they're gonna, you know what they like, what they don't like. Well, for example, what you're showing right here, they're not gonna like that.
Well,
I don't care.
Luckily, we're on Spotify, and I'm under contract, so we can say and do whatever we want.
Precisely. I'm gonna more or less tell it the way I see it.
Beautiful.
I'm a compulsive truth teller, so this is what happens.
Love it. So take me through this. This is interesting.
Okay, well, this is just basically about a concept. They say it's a conspiracy theory. Let's, you know, we might as well maintain open minds about that. The conspiracy theory is called white genocide. And the idea is that, you know, white people, it's not blacks that are endangered, it's not Latinos, it's not, you know, any of these other groups that are endangered, but white people, because we seem to catch all the discrimination these days. We're terrible people, you know, white supremacists, domestic terrorists. You know, I mean, they've got us pegged for all kinds of greatest threat to America's democracy and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that I think we need to address. That's a problem, so we need to talk about it. And here I'm talking about an aspect of the white genocide theory that says that COVID-19 and the vaccines that were manufactured to allegedly to prevent it, that these things are somehow directed toward the destruction of white civilization, white society. You know, all the lockdowns, they've more or less crippled the economy over this thing. We've got all kinds of side effects and nasty things happening to people now. I think we need to address that. This illustration that you're pointing at right here, that's basically, I think this is from 2020, but it was basically the number of infections and the mortality count for COVID-19. And as you can see, I live in the American heartland. That's the extremely red part. If you look over to the left, now this is okay. You got 3 panels here, three dual panels. Okay, the first column, that's non-Hispanic whites. That's the NHW up top. Okay, then you've got non-Hispanic blacks. That's the second panel, and then you've got Hispanics or Latinos over here on the right. Okay, so these are your you know, those are your rates of infection and mortality. Well, you see where most of the infections and mortalities happen. Okay, they're happening with the white panels right here. Okay, now that means that whites are paying an inordinately high price for COVID-19 and the vaccines that were produced to treat it. Nobody's talking about this. You know, it's like, well, everybody's equal and everybody's getting equal amounts of vaccine. Absolutely false. The vaccines were pushed mainly in the Western world. There are other, you know, nations in which they've pushed vaccines fairly heavily. India, for example, I think has had a great deal. But a lot of these countries don't have the same kind of vaccines that we have. Their vaccines aren't as damaging as ours are. Okay, the Pfizer vaccines, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, these vaccines have turned out to be a little bit more of a serious proposition. They were supposedly going to be safety tested before they were released. You're supposed to safety test vaccines, of course. They were neither safety tested nor were they tested for efficacy. In other words, they don't cure COVID. They don't
No.
prevent COVID-19, and they're as unsafe as 10 kinds of hell.
Yes.
Okay, so what are they doing?
Proven.
Releasing them on the Western world, mainly the Western world, which contain majority white nations. Why are they doing this? Okay, well, these are questions that we need to ask. In my opinion, they're up to no good. Okay, so that's why I wrote this. Looking for comments about it, find out what people think. As far as I'm concerned, something needs to be done about it. And
Well,
it's as simple as that.
Well, and then I'll go to the next tab. All right. And then, Chris, the FDA was ordered to release the Pfizer documents. We had Amy Kelly in, and you can actually you can literally put in the batch number of the vaccine that you got, and it will tell you, the percentage in 13 years you're going to have a heart attack is this. If you got this batch, 6 years, so on and so forth, based on the batch. Say the guy stopped at the gas station and got coffee and smoked a cigarette and it got warm. Then the purity of that batch went down because it got warm, so it wasn't as strong. But there's some batches where there's a 98% mortality rate within 13 years. Like the other day, LeBron James's kid. That kid.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, now he's 18 years old, Chris. He's got the best nutritionalists. We know that. The best athletic people on the planet. And he was pro-vaccine. But, LeBron won't come out and say, hey, my kid almost died because of this. Because in my opinion, LeBron's too worried about the $400 million in contracts he has.
Rather he works for China Inc.
Yeah, fucking right he does. Right? So he's not going to come out and say, it's only my son. And people will actually listen to me. And I know they're giving $35 to everybody who's in prison to take the shot, and they do it. Well, my son is sick, stop taking it. But that will never happen.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. And unfortunately, a lot of people who should know better and should be speaking out, like LeBron, aren't in a financial position to do so. Now, in my book, you lose your soul for that. You can't, you got to speak out. If something like this is happening, you've just got to talk about it. You know what I mean? I don't care who's paying you what. I don't care who you work for. You just got to say something.
At some point, it's beyond that. But they don't. They're all in cahoots, and it's all about the greed, in my opinion, and the population.
Exactly. There's a link, I think, to, what is it, whatsmybatch.com or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, yeah. That's what
there
was
is a link.
Yeah,
there's a link to that down in this document somewhere.
Yeah,
but then to get back to the white genocide theory, the other thing that they say is, why did we have over 100 million third world immigrants? That the borders were held open illegally, and why were they let in to the United States and other Western countries? Why did this happen over the course of 50 or 60 years? What are they all doing here? Why were they brought here? It's not as though these people were vetted. It's not as though we said, okay, what can you do for the United States of America? Are you a doctor? Are you a construction engineer? What can you do? And this is what immigration law used to be. Instead, they just tore open the borders and said, come one, come all. So, no matter who you are, come on in. And we've gotten a lot of, I hate to say this, I don't want to be unkind, but we've gotten a lot of people who probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not adding anything to society. Why are over 100 million of them crawling all over the place now? I mean, most of them aren't where it's not as though there are a lot of jobs here anymore. All the jobs were offshored to Asia. Okay. Most of our factories are in. What are these people doing here? Are they out there on the highways and on the roads, reconstructing our infrastructure? I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. So I think what's happening is most of them are on assistance of some kind. And meanwhile, they don't like America. They don't like Americans. So it looks to me that a lot of people think that this has something to do with trying to crowd white people out of their own countries. And in the case of the United States, when you go from 90% white in 1950 or 1960, and you go to 56% white, which is what it is right now, in 50 or 60 years, this can't happen naturally. No. This is not a natural occurrence. This was intentional. So granted that it's intentional, why would anybody intend something like that? Well, whoever they are, they're not our friends. Okay? It's as simple as that. That's where the white genocide theory comes from. So I believe we need to talk about it because it looks like there might be something to it, And it's as simple as that.
And then who's behind it, and what's the point? Well, what's the point? So you want, I mean, obviously you want the population. You got this whole trans thing. You got everything possible to divide. You know, remember before it used to be just racism. You're black, I'm white, blah, blah, blah. Now you have every type of division possible. Like a lot, you know, you talk about religion. Religion is what causes wars.
War.
I mean, all these wars are basically religion unless it's political. Okay. So
these days they are, but of course there's just one religion that is especially warlike these days.
Yeah.
You know, and of course you know that as well as I do.
Yes, of course. And you add that all together and it just creates a mess. So what is behind the border being wide open? I guess to get rid of the whites.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's basically divide et impera, or divide and conquer. Okay, multiculturalism is a scam. It came out of the Frankfurt School. You know how that works. Basically, it's a scam that is meant to, you know, you force having many cultures on Earth is just fine. You know, I used to like the idea of, well, I can go to, you know, Africa and visit Kenya, or I can go to Europe, visit France, and, you know, hang out on the Mediterranean. Whatever you want to do, you can always travel to go to other people's cultures. Taking all of these disparate cultures and jamming them in close proximity, into close proximity with each other, this is a recipe for disaster.
I see.
And
Now
only
it
a
makes sense.
fool could have been blind to this fact.
I see. I see what you're saying now, Chris.
From the very beginning, I mean, you know, here you got, you know, people, they operate differently. They have a different modus operandi. They have different ideology. Of course, they're not going to get along. Why cram them into close proximity like this? It's called ordo ab chaos.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Latin phrase for order out of chaos. Okay, what you do is you take all of these different cultures, you jam them into a country that is dominated by people who may turn out to be your opponents. After all, you're trying to conquer the country. Okay, that's divide and conquer. And then once things get really bad, once the society starts to fall apart because of this multiculturalism, well, then it's time for the Great Reset. Ordo ab chaos.
Okay. Yep.
We've got these little tokens that we can just move reality right into our, you know, tokenized world here.
Isn't it funny, Chris, that probably, I'm just going to take a wild guess, the Bill Gates of the world, the Elon Musk, they'll be okay at the top. But everybody else...
They certainly will be, but you know who they work for. I mean, this whole idea, you know, I get a big kick out of Elon Musk, you know, little self-made billionaire.
Yeah, okay.
No, his grandfather was he was actually arrested, I think. He got in a lot of... He was he was a big shot in the Technocratic Party in Canada a long time ago, right?
I heard that.
You know, basically, Elon has been groomed. And this idea, you know, for a long time, Elon was pissing me off. And here's how he was doing it. They were calling up everybody who wanted to talk about the simulation hypothesis, was calling up Elon Musk, right? Tell us about the simulation hypothesis, Elon. And Elon kept on pontificating on it. You know, it's like if you put in, you know, into Google, if you said Elon Musk simulation hypothesis, at the time I did it, it was returning 5 million hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, with all the quotes and everything. So he was regarded as the world's greatest authority. Well, guess who was the first person to apply the simulation hypothesis to an actual problem?
Tesla.
Who?
Wasn't it Tesla?
Not really.
No.
Tesla was pre-computer. He wasn't really into the computation.
I thought he had done it with math. Sorry about that.
Well, you know, there's nothing to apologize for. Tesla was a brilliant guy. Wouldn't surprise me to find out that his thoughts were kind of wandering in that direction. But it wasn't Tesla, it was me. It was in 1989. Okay? It was 10 years before The Matrix came out.
Now I'm really sorry. Now I'm really sorry.
So, yeah.
So he took that and ran with it. And while you bring Elon up, I must ask you this, and then I want to go to some of your stuff. To me, he seems groomed as groomed can be, buys Twitter for double the amount. I say this at nausea, but you're the guy I want to say this to. He buys Twitter at double the amount, gets Tucker, you know, encrypted messaging. Everybody runs over, sign up. Then after he does all that, all of a sudden, he decides to make Linda, whatever her last name is, the most censorship, vax pro person on the planet, the CEO of the company, And then furthermore odd, 4 days later, Neuralink just happens to get to stage 3 of FDA testing for approval. Just
But he does this stuff all the time.
coincidentally. And then, Chris, go outside and run with your kids because we're going to limit the amounts of tweets. You mean you don't want people searching around too much of other people's opinions. So if we limit it to 600, we're going to put in front of your face what we want you to see, but we're going to tell you we want you to go get air.
Right. You can take a close look at Elon, and I mean, just look at what he owns. His companies, Skylink, with his 5G satellites, and
Tunnels.
Neuralink, where he wants to, chip everybody, and that would be great for the Great Reset, by the way. It would be very convenient. You just put a little chip right here and kind of the web between your thumb and your forefinger, and just, wave your hand, and hey, they know exactly how much money you've been allowed to keep right then. Anyway, Elon has a long history of this kind of thing. He is a facade. Elon is a chimera. He serves a function. Okay, his function is to exemplify the American dream. The American dream isn't doing so well these days, right? Totally. but there's Elon Musk. Oh wow,
the savior,
the richest man in the world. He's got $250 billion. And from nothing, the guy came from nothing. Yeah, except for his allowance was paid in emeralds from his daddy's emerald mine when he was a kid.
Nobody mentions that part.
Yeah, nobody mentions that part. So, Elon he's been groomed from Jump Street. And, all these guys, they're in with I would say that most of the alt media these days is probably run by the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay. You got CIA people in there. They recently found out that almost every, the Hollywood is absolutely, completely infiltrated with CIA. Jesus. So this is what we're dealing with a guy like Elon Musk. I'm not saying Elon is all bad, but I mean, look at the stuff he says. Like, oh wow, we need more children. We've got to actually have more population growth. Otherwise, America's going to disappear. Right, we got almost 350 million people in this country,
and it's growing fantastic,
especially with all these immigrants they've been letting in. And here's Elon telling us, "Oh, we need more of that." Right? I mean, who does this guy think he's kidding? I mean, is he really that dumb that he can't figure out that we do have a population problem? It's just getting worse.
I think he's playing that role, Chris. Of that's the arm that no one's looking at. So you look at Obama and you're like, oh, he's a disaster, Clinton, whoever. But Elon, you look at it, he's the savior. So he's that arm that no one's really looking at what is really going on. But you got one guy that has all these things. It's like, back in the day with like kings and emperors. One guy with all that power, that never turns out good.
Well, it's not just one guy with all that power.
Well, that's the thing.
That's not Elon's money. That's not Elon's money. That $250 billion. Elon has employers that he has to satisfy, and the minute he stops satisfying them, he's in trouble, life-threatening trouble. That's what I think. That's what I think about Elon's financial independence.
I would have to agree highly. Where do you see Israel in this? Are they behind a lot of this?
Well, that's difficult to say. Israel has a lot of influence and a lot of power. You wonder why a tiny little country that was founded, in the late 1940s, I mean, it's brand new. You wonder why this tiny little country has that much power. I mean, when Netanyahu, other Israeli, political figures, diplomats, people, when he comes to the U.S. Congress and he gives a speech before the Congress, he gets a standing ovation.
That's what I mean.
What is that? I mean, how does that happen? Okay, well, it's very obvious why it's happening. It's happening because the world banking system and financial community is controlled by a set of bankers who are very proud of being Jewish. And they had something to do with the founding of Israel. I think it was Lionel Rothschild who had something to do with the Balfour Declaration and the foundation of the State of Israel. And, they also had something to do with the founding of the UN, too. So this gives them a nation, an actual seat in their own world government body.
That's kind of a big deal.
It's a very big deal. It's all. I mean, you got to give these people aren't stupid, right?
Yeah,
They're
that's
stupid
smart.
in some ways because they think we're so stupid.
Right.
But they actually have managed to figure things out. They got nothing better to do. I mean, hey, if you're a Rothschild, you don't need to work. You're not
Yeah.
flipping burgers for a living,
No,
right?
no, that's out the window.
Yeah, you can just and not only can you do the thinking yourself, but you can hire all the finest technocrats,
People around
accountants,
you.
financial experts, tech wizards. You can hire all of those people to do it for you. So that's what we've got. We've got basically a financial community that is dominated by the same people who've been dominating it for the last 200 years, ever since Nathan Rothschild took over the British economy when he bailed the Bank of England out, right? Ever since then, the Rothschilds were the premier financial
Right.
force, the financial it's really a dynasty in the world. By the end of the 19th century, they were reputed to control half the world's wealth. Okay. Now, I keep saying, everybody says, you talk about the Rothschilds, they're obviously very cultured people. And, financially, they're really on top of it. You know, uh, but people say, well, yeah, but that was a long time ago. Okay. Yeah. Nathan Rothschild, and you had all these fantastic, they controlled banking in Europe. But, people encounter setbacks, families like that, they lose their money. I mean, here's some guy who goes out and gambles it all away, or maybe he gets a wife and she, divorces him and takes all his money, so the money just disappeared. This is not what that can't happen in this case, okay? Because it's a system, and that system is like a black hole.
Yeah.
Once it contains a certain amount of wealth and a certain amount of capital, there's no way for it to escape. It just keeps sucking more and more in. So, if someone wants to say, well, the Rothschilds are not really running world finance, right? What they need to do is they need to point out the exact financial setbacks that caused the Rothschilds to lose all their money. Okay? Just do that for me. Okay, come on out. Let's hear about the history. Let's hear what these setbacks were that took control of the world banking system away from the Rothschilds to Schiffs, the Warburgs, all the rest of these guys. What were those setbacks that actually changed the entire, financial landscape? Show me that, and I'll change my mind. But until then, knowing what I know, it looks to me like the financial world is still dominated by the same people essentially the same people who dominated it 200 years ago.
Because no matter how many years went by, the principles, the basic principles would be the same. You're just adjusting to the time.
That's exactly right. It's called compound interest. And believe you me,
interest.
Yeah, the money, it's a one-way thing. Once you develop enough capital and you wire it into that compound interest system, the money just keeps on pouring in. It doesn't just pour in; it's faster and faster and faster. It pours in.
Right now, it's coming through like it's coming through like a Mack truck on steroids.
To be very frank with you, I think they probably control almost everything in the world. I think private ownership is now at an all-time low. I think that, basically there's just not that much available anymore. There's certainly, I mean, can you, like, for example, in the 1800s, if you were in the U.S., you could establish a mining claim. You could just go out and, or there were special claims where pioneers could go out west and they'd get 200 acres, their own farm. And this was an incentive, so they'd go and settle this. There's no place new to settle anymore. There are no more of these grants. Nobody is getting this. The only way you get any land anymore, any kind of property, is if you already have a lot of money, right?
That's it.
Okay, so where does that leave most people? Most people don't start out with a lot of money. So financial opportunity has, spread its wings and flapped away.
And this is, can you pull up tab 3? And this is the basis of how they are right in front of our eyes and people aren't seeing it, where as they take and take and take, we have to depend on the government. And then you have your one world currency, basically like you referred to. They give you a cell phone, they give you a paycheck, they rule you until you go extinct, other than the elite, is what it seems to me. Over time.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what this great reset is. It's the tokenization of the economy. Basically, they've got a real world with a real economy, and they're doing very well there. But they don't have the complete control they want. They don't dominate everything. They can't micromanage your life. So what they have done is they've taken that entire economy and shifted it into a simulated reality, a token world where everything is tokenized. and they can attach their bank credits, to a certain number of those to everybody's name along with their social credit score. Okay,
social
and then
credit score. Yep.
and then if you do something that they don't like, they can just put a few demerits on your social credit score and subtract everything from your bank account, and well,
Oh wow,
that's it for you.
That's
Yeah.
it
Oh
for
well.
you. We own you.
Right, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So once you let them tokenize everything and move it into their own false reality, which they completely control, then it's too late. You can't do a thing about it.
Chris, how
Right?
far are we away from that?
We're it's like this. It's very, very scary.
Close.
It's very, very scary. It scares the hell out of me, and it scares the hell out of anybody with half a brain. But there are a lot of people who think, "Oh wow, I can't wait. I want to get my chip, and just wave my hand and then get whatever I want." You get whatever you want as long as you toe the line. As long as you're lick spittle, a toady, a sycophant. As long as you're that, then they'll sprinkle a few crumbs on you.
Right.
And it's not as though they ever worked a day in their lives. These bankers. I mean, they don't work. They haven't worked for centuries. I mean, there's just no question about that. But you have to work. Okay, and in return for your work, they'll give you a few little crumbs that they conjured out of nothing.
Because you have no other choice.
But you have no other choice. They've taken everything. They own everything. You're basically renting your life from them. And if you stop paying them their rent, then you don't have a life anymore.
And their rent includes what they want you to do and say.
Well, that's precisely right. Yeah.
So we're all their slaves, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. The idea is that you should be a kind of a little bot, a little robot that they can program to behave in exactly the way they want you to behave. And as long as you do that, then you get these crumbs sprinkled on. But if you don't, then the crumbs dry up and now you're in trouble.
And talk about your ultimate reality. I think this is great. And Chris, by the way, not that you need it, but your writings, your YouTube, everything is very simplified and comprehensible if you're just starting to get an interest in this.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So what is the question exactly, Tom?
Okay, we have up your ultimate reality page.
Yeah, well, all right. Let's put it as simply as possible.
Yeah.
If you black box reality, if you just say, okay, reality, everything that exists, everything that is, you've got a black box. Just imagine there's an object. Okay, it's an operator, which means that it does something. It's a reflexive operator, which means that it's doing those things to itself because it's self-contained. And the two things that it does to itself are identify itself and model itself and attribute existence to what it models. So it's basically identifying itself and attributing existence to itself. It's as simple as that. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's trivial. It is not trivial. Logically, it has to assume a certain shape, a certain structure in order for those conditions to be met, as simple as they are, right? And that's what the CTMU does. It develops those logical conditions, and we end up with something called the reality self-simulation scenario. Right, which basically says that reality is a simulation, as it is in the Matrix, but it's not some clunky simulation where people are in pods and connected by cables to some central processing unit. Okay, all of those cables disappear and everything comes together in one seamless reality, one system. So this is, and as far as the structure is concerned, if you want to get into the logic of it, it turns out to be a certain kind of language. That language is called the metaformal system. And there's a paper on that, and it's very exact and it's very uncompromising. And there's nothing ambiguous about it. A lot of people think that that ultimate reality or metaphysical reality, is somehow mushy. That somehow it's ambiguous and kind of nebulous, and nobody's really talking about how things really are. I talk about exactly how things really are, and there's only one way to do it. Yeah. Which gives me a little bit of an advantage when people want to argue about it.
Now, go to the next step. Now, when they have this quantum computer, go to the top. When they have this quantum computer ready,
but what you think they're going to have a quantum computer ready soon, huh?
Well, I've heard such.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
There's something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and you can't get away from it. Basically, the history of quantum computation is trying to get away from the inherent uncertainty of quantum mechanics. They're doing good. I mean, they've got a lot of clever ideas on how to do that. But when they implement these clever ideas, what they're doing is they're cutting down. They pay a price for it. They're cutting down on functionality. So, the quantum computing has not thus far fulfilled its promise. And the promises that are being made for it are basically it's because it's a new and expanding branch of the economy. See what I mean? Right. In other words, this is a way to make money.
This is a way
We're
to
having
make
a hard
money.
time coming up. We're having a hard time coming up with new inventions, new tech that we can make a lot of money off of. So I'll tell you what, even though we're not sure that we can make quantum computing work, let's make it the new thing, right? The new thing that everybody has to invest in. And so that's where everybody's. Same thing is going on with artificial intelligence. I mean, that's an oxymoron.
So they'll call the T3 modem the quantum computer, basically. Go to
basically, basically, yeah. I mean, it's like artificial intelligence. It's oxymoronic.
And really. your YouTube's great.
Because see, quantum computation is an oxymoron because computation is a mechanical process, but then they call it quantum, which is a different kind of mechanics entirely. So quantum computation, those two words don't really go together. So you're hard pressed to explain how they fit together in one concept.
Motherfuckers. Excuse my language, but motherfuckers, another marketing tool. Another marketing tool, these bastards.
That's basically it. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't make money off.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you can make, but it's entirely hype. In other words, it's what people believe about it. It's whether they expect it to pay off. A lot of people do expect it to pay off, but they're being a little bit unrealistic about that.
And Chris,
at the very least, their timetable is screwed up.
We've had physicists in that I know and they are dead set that this quantum computer is going to change the way the universe, what we know about the universe and this and that by 2027. But I guess they're going to be a little bit disappointed when it's really just a T2 connection.
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, you'd have to tell me specifically what physicists you're talking about and what they're saying about it exactly. But it sounds to me like they've been sucked in with the hype. You see,
I think so. String theory, if that rings a bell.
Yeah, string theory.
Yeah,
string theory purports to be a theory of everything.
Yeah.
In some sense, I mean, it's got valuable insights, on what a unified field theory, might look like. That's not a theory of everything. A theory of everything is a blanket theory that explains everything, and not only the objective universe, not only the world of science where you make observations, but also what's going on in here. You got the external universe, and then you've got the internal universe, and that explains nothing about the internal universe.
Right. And your YouTube channel that we have up, like I said, it is very simple. The videos are great. Keep posting them up. I saw somewhere, I read an article. I used to watch. I don't know if you used to watch or it was just referred to. Remember Coast to Coast?
Oh yeah. My wife was I think she was and I've been on Coast to Coast once.
Oh, were you? I used to listen to it every single night before I went to bed for a decade at least.
I was definitely on it. Hey, Jeannie.
Oh, wow. And
who was the guy who interviewed me for Coast to Coast?
He just passed away. Oh, I got to look him up. Oh.
Who was the name of the interviewer on Coast to Coast that interviewed me?
Oh, that was
the guy just died.
That was the one who lives in Las Vegas.
Art Bell.
Yeah, it wasn't Art Bell. Art Bell was the original.
George Knapp?
No, I don't think it was Knapp either.
I can find out.
It was another guy.
Oh, well, congratulations. That was one of my favorite every single night, Chris. For over a decade, I put him on. You're talking about Bigfoot, all kinds of just interesting stuff.
That was a good 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, he passed away. He overdosed. Art Bell did.
Art Bell did.
Yeah.
Art Bell was a very interesting guy.
Yeah, he's very...
I mean, he was... He had a lot of people spellbound.
Yeah, he did. Hey, he had me locked and loaded. I didn't miss that for anything. I didn't know if it was Bigfoot one night or Godzilla or if a UFO was actually coming down.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And there's something to be said for talking about that kind of thing.
but I think it's always just good, even like the conspiracies that are as crazy gets. It's just always nice to have somebody's thought because you never know what could come out of that thought.
Well, exactly. You can't get to any new insights unless you talk about things. And shows like Coast to Coast, they're willing to talk about anything at all, no matter how weird it is. So this is how new ideas come out. That's how they emerge. Gets people to thinking, well, what could it be?
Now, I saw that you had done your SATs and fell asleep after you did them, or you taught yourself everything. I mean,
I fell asleep. I fell asleep after nearly every test I took when I was in. It was like narcolepsy. Honestly, I'd be working on. Sometimes I wouldn't even finish it. I'd start feeling these waves of sleep come over me, and I couldn't fight it.
Yeah.
Then one day I found out I was sitting in I think it was a junior in high school. And I had a teacher, an English teacher, who entertained the whole class. I found out after the fact by coming and snapping her fingers right in front of my face, like this.
Wow.
And I was standing there with my eyes, sitting there with my eyes open. I saw nothing. I was someplace else. That's the kind of thing, and that's the kind of thing that's how it was for me. I was bored out of my wits.
I bet.
So.
Now with having, with the intelligence that you have, did you have trouble communicating with other people, like Peanuts? Like, what is the average IQ? Like 100?
100?
Like the Peanuts like us?
It all depends. Yeah, different groups have different mean IQs.
Because I know with me, myself, and I'm, not when somebody has some stupid idea that is just so non-intelligent and makes no sense, being, an Italian guy from South Philly, I'll say, like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, that's your business idea? Like eyelashes? That's really what you're thinking about for the last week. So for you, being so advanced, how do you do you have to balance that up top?
Well, there's something called the double life strategy. Okay.
Yeah.
You talking to certain, if you're surrounded by intelligent people who actually have a little bit of awareness, then you've got one presentation. Then you can start, talking as you would talk to such people. But when you go out in the world, I mean, I worked a lot of menial occupations, worked construction, worked as a bar bouncer, was a fisherman for a while, firefighter, all this kind of stuff. When you do that kind of thing, you got to turn that off, man. You don't keep that high IQ stuff going upstairs when you do that. I mean, you become a regular. The way I'm talking to you right now, is the way I grew up talking to people, But then, then when it comes time to turn it up, then you can turn it up. That's a double life thing. You develop that ability if you have to. I mean, if you really need to, if you're going from, you're with a bunch of regular guys or, guys that are even more stupid than average, right? But then you're getting together with some really intelligent people. You got to develop the ability to do that.
Now, like before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning, well, what's the first thing you think of when you wake up and go to bed?
No, that's a good question. See, what I do before I go to bed is there's a problem I've been working on. Maybe I've been working on it that day. Maybe it's another problem. It's something that's been on my mind. I'll write it down, and then I'll begin trying to drill into it. I see, okay, what don't I understand about this? And I'll start drilling holes into the problem that go down, to a certain depth, as deep as I can drill, and I drill several of those holes. Then I go to sleep. Now, what happens is connections form among those holes that I dug, that I drilled in this problem before I went to bed. When I wake up in the morning, there's actually, most of the time, whether it's luck or whatever it is, but basically I have a web of connections, a kind of it's a sort of a plexus of meaning that then I can simply tap into at will. In other words, I prime things, I program my mind to work on something overnight, and it does so in the background.
I see.
Right.
So at night you have a problem. You poke holes in it before you go to bed. You figure out the areas. While you're sleeping, your mind's filling those holes. Then you wake up and can see it and can put it together.
That's right. That's exactly what happens.
That's unbelievable. Well, I wish I could do
it. It might be more common than you think it is. It's just probably something that people don't.
Well, I don't think you're thinking about where you're going to hammer a nail or a screw. So my guess is the things that you're thinking about and poking holes in before bed are way beyond, building a table.
They do tend to be abstract. They're problems that nobody else has solved.
I thought he was.
It's things that, okay, we need a new approach to this. What's it going to be? Okay, so you start out, you take a look at it, and say, okay, well, wait a minute, what does this term mean? What does that term mean? What is intelligence? What is consciousness? What do these terms actually mean? And there's no definitions for them. I mean, if you actually take a look, definition for intelligence, well, that's what intelligence tests measure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why are they measuring? I mean, how does
so
that
what are you
actually
measuring actually, right?
So you look for things that are hard to define, and then you go and you form tentative definitions, and you see if they overlap in any way, and then you kind of fill those. You define those overlaps, and then you go to sleep. And in the morning, there it is.
And then what is sleep to you? What is sleep to you? Well, what is sleep?
I seem to be a little bit weird in that respect, which is that there's, most people, they go to sleep and they wake up not being able to remember what happened. Okay. I remember everything. In other words, when I dream, I'm conscious of the dream on some level. I see what's happened. It's not that people talk about lucid dreaming. I don't necessarily get into the dream and try to change it. Instead, I just watch it. What happens? Something is trying to communicate with me, about something that's going to happen, already did happen, some situation that exists. And so I'm going to pay attention to that communication, and I'm going to try to decode this when I wake up. So this is something that I do more than other people.
Now, is that dream, a different dimensional dream, a different reality when you sleep? What is that when we dream? Are we in another reality or just a dreaming? What is it? Because it's more than just I go to bed and I have a dream that a gorilla's next to me.
Well, that's a language. All of these things like that gorilla in your dream, those are symbols. They're the symbols of a language. So what happens is when you have a dream, it is actually speaking a certain language to you. What you've got to do then is try to interpret the dream, which means finding out what that language is trying to tell you. There was a message here. Okay, how am I going to decode that message? So you work with the symbols you've got, and you can usually figure it out. I mean, if you actually put things how does this relate to that? How does that relate to this? You can actually put those things together and come up with a reasonable interpretation of what the message was.
Right.
That's usually the way.
Just like when people do mushrooms or DMT, they see crazy things, and then a month later they realize that thing that they saw or that experience that they had, this person was no good. I got to get them out of my life. And 6 months later, they realized that person was about to rob them.
Right.
Exactly. And I'm just in a different type of way.
That's the kind of thing. A lot of people, who do psychedelics report that kind of, delayed insight. Right.
And then talk about the Mega Foundation.
Well, the Mega Foundation is something that was established by my wife and I. We met through the high IQ community. And, you got Mensa, and then you've got these ultra groups that are more exclusive than that. We were both a member of a couple of those groups, and so that's how we met each other. And what the hell was I talking about just now?
The Mega Foundation, and
right.
And I was just going to say that your wife's also a neurologist, right?
She's a clinical psychologist. Actually a neuropsychologist.
Okay.
Technically, a kind of psychologist that is called a neuropsychologist.
That's a very intelligent home that you got.
Well, a psychologist who knows more about the brain than most people do. Anyway, we
perfect match for you, buddy.
and the thing is, the high IQ community is completely, Lance Ware and other people who put together Mensa had the idea that it was going to be this think tank that solved important problems for mankind. That's what Mensa was supposed to be originally. Turned out to be a bunch of, I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but, a bunch of party people that just wanted to get together and BS and drink a lot, right? And try to get in each other's pants, right? This is basically what it turned out to be. So then you got these higher, more rarefied groups that thought that they were going to be the ones that were going to actually fulfill the promise of the high IQ community. They turned out to be roughly the same thing. The more rarefied the group of high IQ people, the more pointless bickering goes on. I mean, they're just constantly at trying to one up each other. Well, I'm smarter than you are. You're not smarter than I am. And it just goes on and on and on. Finally, my wife and I got sick of that, and we figured, okay, we're going to have to, actually try to cut to the chase here and say, no, this is the way it's going to be. And we're not going to, let people just join, qualify for a group and then be able to totally mess it up like this. Okay. We're going to have a nonprofit foundation that will consist of high IQ people, but it's going to, be a non-member organization that is going to be dedicated to solving some of these problems that people like Lance Ware were talking about. So that's what the Mega Foundation is.
That's awesome. And then that way, when you pick them like that, instead of everybody bickering, everybody works together for a common goal.
Precisely. And that's very good because it's kind of there's a wellness aspect to it. People, the more intelligent you are, the harder it is to talk to other people. So you kind of you develop this loneliness, this sense of isolation. And something like the Mega Foundation, where people get together and they have social media essentially, in which they can talk to each other and converse about intelligent subjects, with certain rules in place, like, no, we're not going to tolerate, your knockdown drag out with this other guy here. We're going to try to keep it constructive. This is something that can be very healthy for people. And it helps, it helps cure their isolation. And this is something that we try to do for intelligent people because a lot of them really need the help.
Yeah, and Rob and I talk about it just from having in guys like yourself, Hoffman, other people as such. And you go home and you try to talk to somebody about it. Hey, look, I really think that we're in some sort of interface. And they just look at you like you got a tin hat and they're back to their TikTok bullshit or whatever it may be, And the more I do this, the more I come home and people are like, Tommy, I really think you're losing it with this podcast. Okay? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, no. You don't understand. I know. I know this is right, And, but I could see how beneficial that would be because just from having doing this and learning what I've learned, and then I learn a little bit more every time. Who do you talk? Like just me hearing it, not understanding it mathematically, but understanding it enough where I believe it, I see it, I can comprehend it. Like I'd love to have somewhere just to throw ideas back and forth to get up to date.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's nowhere to go because you're just labeled some lunatic.
Precisely. That's the kind of thing that tends to happen in most social media, and it's the kind of thing that we avoid at the Mega Foundation. We try to maintain open minds and really talk about, how and the CTMU really helps with that, by the way, because it's a broader framework in which you can interpret a lot more of what most people consider to be paranormal phenomena. Yeah. For example, you can talk about, well, is there life after death? Is there such a thing as ghosts? What about UFOs? What are those? That kind of thing. You can actually talk about it in this expanded framework in a way that you can't if you're just locked into this physicalism framework that most people use. Right. Well, everything is, if I can do this, then it's physical. And, that's what everything has to be explained in terms of. Otherwise, it can't exist. Right.
And it's great, too, because you can go on there and read what you guys are saying to each other. So if somebody says, hey, Chris, what do you think happens when you die? Which I do want to know what you think. But you get a real answer, like an answer from somebody who studied it. Then you get this answer, that answer. And nobody's a weirdo. You get genuine, intelligent answers rather than, well, this says this,
Right, and nobody's laughing at anyone else.
No.
Nobody's just subjecting anyone else to mockery, right? Which is if you go out on ordinary social media, it's crawling with trolls, right?
Trolls, I hate it.
As soon as you say something that the troll can latch onto, you're in trouble because the troll is going to latch onto it, right? So, there's a little bit of a civility thing going on, and people are. That it's surprising. It's been very rewarding having the Mega Foundation because you do meet a lot of people who you might not think they're not necessarily connected. They don't work at a university. They're not some sort of a science expert, but nevertheless they're extremely intelligent. And they can come up with ideas and put things together in novel ways that can actually bring insight to everybody else. Right. So if you're just open-minded about it and you look at what someone says carefully, and even if they haven't been quite, exact in the way they express it, if you just try to figure out what they meant, you know what I mean? If you really put in the effort, you can really get someplace.
Right. And then you build from them. and you build from them.
Exactly.
You all build from each other as a community. As much as you may not disagree, there has to be something that person might be close to on, or whatever it may be. I just think it's a great thing because I'm so into it. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
if you were in the studio, you'd see I got stars on the ceiling. I got a UFO thing here from what was his name? I don't remember his name anymore after talking to guy.
Barry?
No, Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar. I was
Bob Lazar. Yeah,
I was stuck on Bob Lazar for a while. I had him send me a UFO thing. So I've been going down this rabbit hole for a minute here. So
yeah. Well, that's only natural. I mean, these things are interesting to talk about. You know.
So what do you think happens when we die? When we die in this reality, what do you think happens?
Well, I think there's a mapping attaching you to the GOD, which is the Global Operator Descriptor, which is the distributed identity of reality. There is a mapping called muomorphism that attaches you to that identity, okay? And when you die, you can be retracted into the non-terminal domain of the metaformal system, okay? And then you can actually be transferred to another existence.
Which could
from
be
that
anything.
hub, from that hub. I mean, Zuckerberg, for example, uses a term, the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about the functionality of a metaverse, how a metaverse would actually have to function. Okay. Zuckerberg doesn't know anything about it. Right?
No.
But as far as I was probably the first person to use the term metaverse, as a matter of fact. I'm not sure about that. There's a science fiction guy that Zuckerberg credits for doing that. But I've been talking about the syntactic metaverse for years, which is an aspect of the CTMU.
Yeah, I saw a paper in 89 you wrote, 90 maybe, and you were saying meta. You should have copyrighted that. Chris, what are you doing? You got the...
Well, it's automatically copyrighted.
I know.
Copyright law is written in such a way that as soon as you write a paper, it's basically copyrighted to you, unless you put it out in the public domain and kind of invite people to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what you're saying is you think when we die, we go back to, say, a base, and then in simple terms, like a base, and then you get shot out to another.
Qualify.
If you qualify.
If you qualify.
And what would be the standards to qualify?
Well, if you're a serial killer, you're going to have a hard time getting retracted to the base again because the base doesn't want anything to do with you anymore because you're a serial killer.
But how?
I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
Well, yeah, but how if you were born into a family that beat your brains out, mentally just destroyed you, and you turned into a lunatic just by way of, I don't even want to say the way of reality that exists at the moment?
Mm-hmm. Well, there still has to be repentance. You've still got to actually realize that you did something wrong. Okay, you had this problem, you were beaten as a child, you were abused, you got the wrong idea. People actually told you that certain things were appropriate and acceptable that were not. You've got to realize that, and you've got to sincerely desire with all your heart to make an improvement in yourself. If you don't, then you can't be retracted, because whatever you're retracted to, you're going to take these same problems that you have here, you're going to retract. Those are going to be retracted with you. And the base, is, this GOD thing that I'm talking about. This is something that is perfect. Okay. That's why you want to be retracted to it, because all of your cares are wiped away. You are not allowed to bring problems like serial killing in its base. So there has to be a block. There has to be a filter that filters you out if you're contaminated. And people can get contaminated through no fault of their own. But at some point, you've got to realize what is happening to you, and you've got to try to come to a better way of doing things. Now, if you're willing to do that, then you can always be forgiven. You can always get salvation. What most religious people, these are the terms that they use regarding, you can seek the forgiveness of God. Okay. But if you don't do that, if it's, I'll serial kill anyone I want to, anytime I want to. And, God has to forgive me because I'm a person too. That's not the way it works.
That's not the way it works.
But believe me, it can't work that way, because you could contaminate something that has to remain pure. It has to remain pure and invariant so that it can distribute over everything and everybody symmetrically. Okay. But if you're the kind of person who isn't consistent with that, then you can't be retracted, and your afterlife prospects are limited on that account.
So would that coincide with, say, I get a gut feeling, and my gut or my instinct, my natural instinct in this reality says, I know this is wrong. but I go the other direction and I do the wrong. So my instinct is telling me something's wrong, but I do it anyway. So now I'm headed to go back the wrong way because my instinct or my inner somewhere is telling me that this isn't the right choice, the right thing to do. I'm going the wrong way. I go kill somebody. But that instinct or whatever you want to call it had told me this isn't a good idea, even subconsciously. Would that coincide with the two? Because now that you had said that, when we had Joven Pulitzer on, he invented the QR code. And that guy had the worst upbringing on the planet. Mm-hmm. And he talked about it openly, raped by his father, beat, everything. And he came out fine, just perfect with the family. So
well, some people do.
So he just chose to go with his gut, to get in the car, to get away from everything rather than go be a drug dealer and kill everybody. In a sense, I'm just trying to make it simple.
Right. Well, okay. If he actually succeeded in curing himself of these moral flaws that he had, if he actually had, takes a good deal of, you got to be committed to improvement. I mean, there's a price you pay. If you want forgiveness, if you want to be retracted, if you want to be part of the family again, the human family, that means you've got to shape up. Okay? That takes effort. So it's not as though you can just say, well, guess what? I'm not going to serial kill anybody today. I've decided to straighten up and fly right. So for the time being, anyway, I'm not going to commit these crimes. That's not good enough. Okay? It's got to be something that goes very, very deep. You've got to transform yourself. And this kind of transformation is not easy to accomplish. So you got to be very careful. I don't know anything about the fellow you're talking about, so I can't say in his case what the story is, but it's not easy.
And how do you find that?
The worse you've been, the worse things you've done, the harder it's going to be. If you want to give yourself over to Satan and Satan owns you, obviously he's not going to let you turn around and choose to do the right thing all of a sudden. You see?
So what? And you didn't have the easiest upbringing either. So what?
No, so I certainly didn't. No,
yeah.
But I usually don't talk about it very much. But we had there's quite a bit of domestic turmoil in our families. The family was broken several times.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. There, but for the grace of God. I mean, I could have ended up. There were people who thought that me and my brothers would end up in a maximum security penitentiary dead before we hit adulthood, but we didn't.
Good
we
for
didn't.
you.
Every single one of us turned out to be. We straightened up and flew right. You know what I'm saying? Even though we had this, it was kind of a brutal thing. I mean, we were, pretty much. The old man would, he was a little bit of not a very gentle guy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of that kind of problem, and nevertheless, it's possible to get over it. To say, okay, well, this was an aberration. What has happened, to us, this is not the way it should have happened. So we're going to proceed normally. Pretend it didn't happen. Okay? And we're going to do things right. If we have a family, we're not going to abuse the kids, right?
And then how much?
That's what my brothers did. My brothers all had
all
families, and they're wonderful fathers.
Good for you and your family.
I'm very
man.
proud of them.
Yeah, all of you. And then what did that had to in some way given you the drive, the drive to just keep working hard, more than just a high IQ. Like you still got to have drive, right?
Oh yeah.
And what gave you the drive, and why do you think you went down the route of trying to figure out what all this is? What sparked your interest in just trying to figure out these super amazing, complex questions?
Well, just wanting to know what reality is. I mean, here we have a life. We're given this life that we live, but we don't really know what it is, right? And we inhabit reality. There's something called reality out there. We don't know what that is either. And because we don't know what we are and we don't know what reality is, we don't know what the proper relationship between the two is. In other words, we don't know our asses from our elbows, right? So at some point, if you have any intelligence, and you have enough intelligence that you think you can solve that problem, then you're going to go ahead and do it. And if you've had the kind of upbringing or the kind of life where you've been isolated, or you've noticed that it's all a clown show, and that there's probably better things you can do with your time, then that will give you all the more incentive to work on these problems by yourself. I was always the kind of person who didn't mind being by himself. I was a Forest Service lookout for a while. I can stay completely by myself for months at a time and just be perfectly happy about it. A lot of people can't do that.
A lot of people, especially nowadays. But this generation cannot be alone. It is
these kids
crazy,
with their,
man.
you watch their little thumbs going as they tap on their smartphone. I don't think I could do that. I got these like fat thumbs, I don't own a cell phone because we don't get cell phone service here at the ranch.
I held on to the BlackBerry as long as I could because my fat thumbs weren't good with the iPhone. So I held on to that until there was BlackBerry just torched themselves because I couldn't feel anything. I think it's the worst thing ever. But I haven't seen you be too concerned about AI. You don't seem too concerned to me in what I've read about AI. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you have any kind of tech, the first thing that they're going to try to do with the people, all of the tech is owned by people that own the corporations that manufacture the tech. Those are all rich people that are members of the overclass, right? So the first thing you have to ask is, well, given any particular kind of technology, how weaponizable is it? Can the overclass take it and weaponize it against me?
Right.
Okay. Now, AI is something that they can weaponize the hell out of. It's very obvious that they can do this, right? That's what they're doing. All of this computer security, all of this surveillance, technology that they have, all of the bots and the AI that they're using on social media and chat bots and all the rest of it. All of this can be very dangerous. Yeah, they're sitting on this great big pile of data to which they never had access before the present time. What are they doing with that data? Well, they're abusing the hell out of it. They can follow you around. They know microscopically what you're doing at every, especially if you have a cell phone. They can literally track you in real time using devices like this, and it has gotten them spoiled. Now they think, well, they're letting us do it. They're letting us surveil them like this. I guess they like it. We might as well know everything about them. Wouldn't it be cool if we could put something in their body that would tell us 24/7 what's happening, inside them, Yeah. And if you can do that, if you can stick something in that will monitor a person, monitor their thoughts and behavior, well, you can also, there's the possibility of being able to control that person through the same interface.
All right.
You see? And so this is the way they think now. Okay. AI is very, very dangerous for this. I think Elon Musk has been talking about that recently, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. What a danger AI is. And of course, that's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black.
I was just going to say
fox
that.
Guarding the hen house. Yeah,
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, he's got 7 different chips to put in your head.
Exactly. So anyway, I used to tell people that if I had been in charge of artificial intelligence, we'd have it by now, and we certainly would have more than we got. But you've got all these little millennial munchkins and people graduating from. And they go there, and it's all about software and programming, and how can we make money? How can we get a new innovative program that actually helps the government keep tabs on us? Yeah. And this is what they're doing. Oh, that's what half of this AI. Well, half. This is what damn near all of it is.
All of it is.
Basically designed to help the government keep tabs on you, the citizen. Right? This is damaging as hell. Our rights are going down the toilet. Our privacy is going down the toilet. So I'm not a big fan of AI, and I am very careful. It's not something to which I want to contribute unless I can trust the people that I'm working with. And the way it is right now, I mean, who the hell are you going to go to work for? You're going to go to work for Google? Well, it's going to be abused then. And most of the other companies that you can go to work for as an AI specialist, as an AI tech, they're going to be the same kind of company.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be weaponized. It's going to be used against the public. Something I'd rather not have on my conscience.
You should build one. Mm-hmm. You build one. After you're finished with your book.
I should, but I don't have the resources.
Yeah, right. That'd be like that's the thing. When I first went down this rabbit hole of what you do, and you and Hoffman make the most sense about everything. Your articles are real easy. Everyone else, I would ask them certain questions, high-end astrophysicists, so on and so forth, and they would start to answer, and then they would swing it. And what I realized is it's because of grants. They got to stop themselves because they want that grant at Harvard, Stanford, wherever it may be. And by doing so, they're just putting a roadblock in humanity.
That's absolutely correct. That's correct. There are too many people willing to take those 30 pieces of silver and sell the rest of humanity out.
Yeah.
Right? All you got to do is, well, what are my stock options? Do I want to sell humanity down the road? Well, what are my stock options? What would I get out of that? That's what your average college kid is now thinking. I mean, morality is down the toilet. I mean, they don't really have a conscience anymore about what they're doing to humanity by pursuing these lines of endeavor, AI being one of them.
And speaking of AI, I think it's just completely nonsense to think that they're not going to be controlled, because this is fascinating. I could type in anything and get anything I want. I could scan anything, blah, blah, blah. So just like social media, the government comes in, and even if you don't want to go along with the agenda, your option is going to be, we're going to take down your site and you're going to have nothing, or your results are going to come out like this.
Well, that's exactly what happens. Yeah, those are your options. You either play ball or you're out. That's it. I mean, I'm one to have I might be the most canceled person around. I realize there's some people out there that are pretty damn canceled, but it's been going on for a long time. I don't know of people who actually do interviews like this. I did an interview with the Daily Wire not too long ago. They actually flew my wife and I to where the hell was it? Nashville. Flew us to Nashville, did this whole big thing with Mike Knowles, and I met Jeremy Boring and other people who own the company. They were all just absolutely elated about the interview, right? And it was going to come out in a couple of weeks. They pulled it.
They pulled it?
Somebody told them to. I don't know who the hell it was, but there are people running around, and if they think that you're not playing ball, they are going to make sure that you get screwed in this way. You're going to make sure that you get canceled. Yeah, the Daily Wire pulled that interview, basically deep sixed it, and as far as I know, I'm the only person they ever pulled that on.
Wow!
Right, and there was no reason to pull it. Now, just a little bit after that, about a month after that, I think, is when they signed Jordan Peters. And I sort of thought to myself, why would this have happened? And I thought maybe this was a play to get Jordan Peterson to sign. Maybe they were in negotiations with Jordan, and Jordan was like, dragging his feet, and, they finally wanted to light a fire under him. So what did they do? They brought in another guy who's even smarter than Jordan Peterson is. Okay. So that's what I think. That's what I think may have happened there, but they still should have shown it. So why, why didn't they? I mean, they still could have shown it even after they hired Jordan Peterson. Right? So why would they just suddenly up? And we ask them for a reason why. But, can we ask why you're not showing this interview?
No answer.
So that's how you know you're getting canceled.
Yeah.
If they don't have a good reason for it, then you know that somebody is calling them up and saying, guess what? We don't want this interview shown. We don't like this guy. We don't trust this guy. This guy is saying things we don't like. So if we see this interview on the air, you're going to pay the price.
Well, Chris, okay? I don't care. So I can promise you that this will be on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, because whichever God can call me up, I don't care. So there's that. There's the end of that. So believe me, it will go up. They can call me. They could threaten me with some contract bullshit. It goes up. Fuck them.
All right. Okay.
They're crazy.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that.
Well, listen.
I'm going to tell you, these guys could be hard to resist.
I don't care. We're both old school Philly guys. Yeah. I've been through way worse threats. You know what I mean? So
now, I believe it.
Fuck, back to Well, I wish I could have done my SATs and took a nap back then. Jesus. What do you think about SATs holding so much weight?
Oh, well, a lot of people criticize standardized testing. And they say, well, that there are cultural biases that are built into these tests. I don't think that a lot of them are aware how much effort has gone into getting rid of cultural bias and actually making these tests culture fair. It's called culture fair. I think that now we have tests that do give you a pretty good, pretty accurate representation of how, smart someone is up to a certain level. The ceiling of most IQ tests is about 160, 165, right? You got two kinds of IQ. You've got ratio IQ, which is little kids. If you have a 10-year-old who's as smart as a 20-year-old, then that's 200 IQ. But those kids tend to regress as they get older. And finally, you get something called an adult IQ, which is measured by IQ tests like the WACE, for example. And that is a more accurate representation of how smart you actually are. Those tests are pretty accurate, and they tend to hold constant in time. If you, for example, score 140 on the WACE when you're 20 years old, you're likely to stay. That's likely to remain your IQ score for a long time, right? So this is, we need an IQ scores, by the way. These tests, achievement tests, IQ, they do correlate with achievement in certain lines of work, right? Certain abilities that you can have, certain talents that you have, they do correlate with that. And that's why the school system still uses it, right? That's why they're still widely used in placement, for example, okay? But they're not politically correct. I mean, because groups that have a lower mean score on these tests constantly think they're being discriminated against. They're not. And placating them, mollifying them, and saying, okay, well, even though your average mean group IQ appears to be 75, even though it's really, really low, we're going to go ahead and promote you anyway, and we're going to give you this job and that job, and we're going to give you grants and loans. You want a loan? Okay, we're going to give you all of this stuff. This works very much to the detriment of society.
Yeah,
people end up unqualified for the positions that they get. Okay. There are smart people that are left, by the wayside, basically, go watch TV and drink beer, right? Whereas these other people that were allegedly oppressed or, had some sort of a cultural disadvantage, these people end up with jobs they just can't handle. They just don't have the abilities. So that's what I think. I don't like to see, anybody discriminated against because they have a low IQ or come in with a low test score. That kind of bugs me, but Pete's sake, don't expect them to function as a university president, if that's the problem, right?
Yeah, and to have one test to cipher, like when I was in school, that was the big deal. That SAT meant everything. God knows what it means now. Who knows? But now I can look under a microscope and tell you every cell in COVID. I can tell you how the brain fires. But if you tell me to build a table, Chris, I can't build a table. I have to be interested, and then I'm zoned in, and I can literally break down everything with COVID. I can break down cells and how A1 receptors work and stuff like that. Like it's nothing. I know I don't look it, Chris. So you're looking at me a little crazy, but I actually can. You can ask him. I can tell you.
No, I actually believe it. I know guys like that absolutely.
But when
hated school, didn't do very well in school, but they end up being one hell of a lot smarter than they looked when they were in school later in life. You just weren't motivated, they weren't stimulating you enough, or there was some other kind of problem, and I had the same problem to a certain extent. A lot of my teachers thought that I underperformed as well.
And you're in the middle of your book, right? I know you hurt your knee. We were trying to fly in for 7 months.
I keep on rewriting it because this is, supposed to be the layman accessible version of the CTMU, and I keep on looking at it and saying, if I was a layman, would I really understand this? And then I have to go and rewrite it and try to, dig under and make it more clear. And so this is a recurrent process. That's what's taken me so long to write this current book. But I am making headway, so it shouldn't be that much longer.
I love it. And now that I think about it, I think, because I've read a lot of your stuff, I think that they're suppressed. One reason they're suppressing you is because if people attach on to that and they keep reading it, I tell a friend, another friend checks it out, that kind of gets rid of religion in a way. And if you kind of get rid of religion in a way, you take money. So what I'm saying is, like, when I read through your things that you write, it makes it as if I interpret it as, you have Christianity, Catholic, Muslim, all this other stuff. If all that's gone, right, and we're more focused on conjugative things, reality, not such this religion ball game, we're just all trying to work together.
Well, there's something, okay, now this is a very interesting topic. You're right, okay? There's, first of all, let me say that there's a purpose for religion. It has often been abused. People have used it to oppress the masses, con the masses into doing certain things. But really, religion has proven to be an indispensable moral foundation, right? In other words, when this country was largely Christian, there weren't as many crooks as there are now. There weren't as many criminals as there are now.
Fear.
Okay, there was, people were God fearing. They thought, well, if I sin, if I do commit crimes against other people, there's going to be a price for that. I'm going to have to pay it somewhere along the line. Religion was good; it served a purpose. That's a reliable purpose. Unfortunately, religions contradict each other, right?
Right, that's the problem.
They contradict, and here's the problem with religious scripture. I mean, people say, okay, this is the absolute truth, religious scripture. You've got to interpret it. Any written work that you have is going to need to be interpreted, right? If you don't interpret, if I hand you a children's primer, a kid's book, right, and I hand it to you and I say, okay, can you read this? The first thing you're going to have to do is interpret it in order to read it. You got to interpret the symbols. What is that symbol? What is that symbol? What is that symbol? When you combine them like that, what do they form? They form a word. What does that word mean? Okay, it's next to this word here. What do the two words mean when you put them together? This is all interpretation, right? A scripture is the same way, right? The Bible, the Quran, the Talmud, all of these religious texts, they're the same way. They have to be interpreted. And unfortunately, they don't tell you how to interpret them. No. There is no standard metaphysical framework into which they can be interpreted. You see? Okay, so the next step in religion is finding that one master framework in which you can map all of the religious insights that have been generated by all of these religions and their scriptures, right? And so that's what the CTMU is.
That's what I meant to say, Chris. Chris, that's what I meant to say. That's what I was trying to say.
So that's what we have to move on to.
Yeah.
We have to move on to a meta-religion, which is a metaphysical framework in which all of these religions can be convergently interpreted so that they're consistent with each other and don't go to war with each other and find themselves in mutual conflict all the time. All right? Okay. All you have to do is know how to construct it, and unfortunately, most people don't. They're constantly talking about okay, now I've lost my little zoom here completely. There are a lot of people that talk about the syncretistic things that are going on in the UN, for example, where they're talking about we need a world religion. These people, a lot of them are very wrong-headed. I mean, they might be well-intentioned, but they don't know what they're doing. This is a surgical. It has to be surgically done. I mean, you have to know logic, you have to know mathematics, you have to know a lot of things that, and you have to know them well before you can do this properly. And unfortunately, those people have nothing to do with the UN. They have nothing to do with the new world religion that they're going to set up. That's all syncretism. That's where they're taking this ritual and that belief, right, and that sacrament from this or that religion, and they're kind of throwing them all, making a hodgepodge out of them and saying, okay, this is going to be the new world the new world religion. Okay, but it's not a meta-religion because it doesn't have the proper logical structure. You can't interpret all of these scriptures in it so that they make sense. You see? That's what they're not providing. So we need that. We need that. The meta-religion is the new state of theological consciousness that we need to stop arguing about things like God and good versus evil and the other moral conundrums that we've been facing for centuries.
And what you mean, just to take you back to the beginning, so when people read through what you wrote, if you believe Adam and Eve ate an apple, okay, what you're reading in the scriptures that Adam and Eve ate the apple, but what was the apple? What was Adam and Eve? What was the circumstances around it? Because, as you said, just reading it, you think Adam and Eve ate an apple and all of a sudden everything appeared, which to me is just hilarious. But I'm an asshole. But if you look at it...
well, it's metaphorical. You have to know it.
Right,
it's a metaphor and it has to be interpreted.
Right, so I look at it like, okay, well, what was the apple? What was Adam and Eve? What happened? And what you're saying...
What was the serpent? Right. Exactly.
What was the circumstance?
What was the tree of knowledge of good and evil? All that
right.
stuff.
Then you go into, like, say, the Quran, see what happened in the Quran around the same thing, and somehow intelligently put that together so that everybody can agree on one. Not just like botch, here, this is it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
Then everybody's happy because everybody got a little of their piece that makes sense. That would be a beautiful thing.
That's right.
That would be a beautiful thing.
It certainly would be a beautiful thing, wouldn't it? It's one of my greatest hopes, and it's a large part of the reason for what I've been doing. I really want to be, and so it's largely already there. I mean, the framework has been built, and I've been interpreting, various theological statements, religious statements in this system to show people how it's done. And we're going to go a lot farther in terms of spelling it all out so that we get the meta religion that we need. But that's the whole thing. You need a religious meta language. It's got to have certain logical characteristics. And once you have that, then you can map all of these things convergently into it so they can cohabit there. They can live together in peace.
They can coexist. Yep, coexist.
They can coexist. Correct.
Now, what about the stone tablets? Are you familiar with the stone tablets? The writings on the stone tablets that from however many gazillion years ago, and you can transcribe them, and all of them seem to have something from the Bible within them. Are you familiar with any of that?
Stone tablets. Well, of course, we all know about the stone tablets that Moses brought down. But no, I'm not familiar with these particular stone tablets.
Am I saying that wrong?
Commandments?
No, the one that Carson was talking about.
Well, that was in the cave, wasn't it?
Yeah. Am I saying it wrong?
It's just like the writings almost.
Yeah, the Billy Carson that come in, he's he's got a lot of good theories, open mind type thing. And he had brought up these stone tablets that were found in caves that had a lot of scripture writing on them. And
the Dead Sea Scrolls and things like that.
No, it was basically they were like they're in a cave that like it's so hard to get to. And they had like writings almost, I think, on the walls basically of like, it would be like an animal or a person that looked like half animal, half person, right? That was written on the walls.
Right.
Okay. And to make a long story short, so they found a bunch of these, they transcribed them, and it told the evolution of the Earth or of the universe, where the Earth was really a planet that got broken in half, and we're the half of another planet. Do you know any of that stuff? Or is that just all?
Well, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It sounds to me like there's a metaphor there that it's basically an ancient cosmogony or cosmology. And that's the kind of thing that would have to be interpreted. You're not talking about the Nag Hammadi. Okay.
Actually, no, I think I'm talking about the Nag Hammadi.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah,
right. That's the Nag Hammadi. There's a lot of stuff that never made it into the Bible, for example, that was originally supposed to make it into the Bible because it had a questionable provenance. Something seemed off about it, so it was kind of excluded, or it was inconsistent with what the powers that be wanted people to think back then. So these are like books of the Bible that were kind of like excluded, and there's a whole body of this material that's out there, and a lot of it is related to Gnosticism. Okay,
yeah.
Right, and there were a lot of Gnosticism is heretical from the point of view, for example, of the Catholic Church, right, the Roman Catholic Church. So it is included in the Bible. When you buy a Bible, all this, and you have to buy that extra. You have to go and buy another book.
Oh, you got to buy another one.
Contains all of this other material,
okay.
And a lot of that's. And what we're talking about sounds a little bit about, it sounds a little bit like some of that stuff that appears among those excluded works.
Yeah.
Right. Those ideas, but no, as far as the stone tablets are concerned, not familiar with them. And of course, as Rob was saying, written on cave walls and things like that. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls and other things were found. They were actual scrolls that were found in caves, fairly inaccessible caves in the Middle East. But I need a little bit more information before I can put my finger on exactly what we're talking about.
Sure. Last couple of things, because I don't want to abuse your time. What do you think about past civilizations? I always, being that I no longer believe that the UFOs are coming down here, because I can't seem to understand why anybody who could bend time or find a way to get here, 15 billion light years away would suddenly happen to crash on Earth, and there's not any evidence of anything at all. So that's out the window to me. And then the way that they're presenting it. So I always thought, okay, well, how do you go from a car phone when I was growing up my friend Franco had a car phone. Everybody wanted to be in that car because his mom had a car phone in the Cadillac. You know, we're piled up to get in this guy's car.
Sounds like a rich kid.
Yeah, he was a rich kid that sold pizza. Yeah. So, and then within, a decade, you have the iPhone and all this crazy technology. Was that there? What did we find something from a past civilization and we're able to reverse engineer it? How did that come so quick? Because I look at it like
that's a very interesting question. As you know, some people think it's alien technology.
I no longer do. I'm all for that road. I no longer do, thanks to people like you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is that there have been a lot of things that have come to people through the power of the human mind that you wouldn't think would have come to them. Now, you mentioned Nikola Tesla. He could actually see blueprints of the designs for the machines that he made. Could actually see them, detailed blueprints in his mind. His mind had the capacity to do this, and it's a capacity that is not very well understood. But some people have the power to actually pull this stuff out of the air. Now, an interesting question is, well, in order for them to pull it out of the air, must it already exist somewhere in space and time? Must there be some distant civilization that had this technology and somehow it kind of traveled through space and time and now it's in the air so that we can pick it up out of there?
Like a frequency. Like a frequency.
Well, a little bit like a frequency, yes.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting question. Another interesting question is, could it be somewhere in the future? And people are just transferring that future information, even though it doesn't already exist, somehow getting a hold of it and pulling it back through time so that now they have access to it. And these are all, different approaches to the to what it is. Me, I have no problem. It's in the air. A lot of this information is in the air, so you can think of it. There are, however, some, thinking of things like lasers, for example. They're not at all obvious. I mean, you've got to be a real specialist in order to know what you need to do that, right? Either that, or you've got to be your brain must be some kind of antenna that is pulling this kind of information out of the air, right? But we shouldn't underestimate how powerful the brain is and how easily it can actually pull information like that out of the air and put it together. It's all part of the way our brain really works. It's not just a computer. It doesn't just process data like a computer does. It's way better than that.
It downloads
it's like an
too.
antenna. It functions a little bit like an antenna, that actually exists and extends out into deeper levels of reality, right? And can pull stuff up from those deeper levels.
Is one's, or in general, is the future in a somewhat way, shape, or form already written? No.
We have free will. There is a lot of people. Free will is a hotly debated issue. People have it or not. Yes, we have it. Okay, there's no question about that. Okay, because there is no background against which the future can be determined. And the universe is background free. It's self-contained. So basically, the universe has to make its own future, right? So the universe itself has free will. And if the universe has free will in that sense, then the universe can transfer free will to its images.
I see.
In other words, its components, which are basically mirror images of it. What I'm trying to say is that the universe is self-similar. We're all microcosms.
Right.
You're a microcosm, I'm a microcosm, Robert's a microcosm.
So
right? We're just images of the universe as a whole. So if it has a property like free will, we're going to have that property too.
Interesting.
Right? And there are more technical reasons why we have to have free will as well. Basically, all that free will is it means you're creating the medium along with the states. In other words, most people think that there's a fixed manifold, right? Some kind of a grid, and that you can make laws of physics that are parameterized within this grid, right? And that those laws of physics determine future events, right? But there is no fixed grid. Okay, that would be a background. That would be an external background. There is no grid. So that grid has to be built. It has to be synthesized from scratch, right? So it's not as though you can predict future states just by referring to this fixed background. You've got to determine the states and the grid and the background at the same time. Right?
To have the full picture. That's free will.
Yes, that's free will.
So then when we go back to the UFO thing, do you think there's other life out there on other planets far away? Do you think they're coming here? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, what I think is that we live in a universe where the universe is made out of something. It's made out of one basic universal substance. It has to be. And that's called monism. Okay. Monism means, well, the universe is idea, the universe is matter, right? Well, whatever people think the universe is made out of. The universe is actually made out of something called telesis. Okay. And this telesis is something that can be factored into reality. This happens through certain processes that we go through, and the universe is constantly creating itself. It's in the process of creation 24/7, and there are a lot of logical things that you have to know about this. Like I said, this is the metaformal system and quantum metamechanics and the reality of self-simulation principle, which are some of the papers I've written on this topic. There's quite a few technicalities there, so it's not that easy to understand.
So
what was your original question again?
So, like, is there other life out there, or is there other intelligent life out there, or is this just what we're seeing in this?
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
No problem.
What I was going to explain was that there is actually this telesis, this protean metasubstance that makes up the universe. This stuff is constantly looking for opportunities to nucleate, to self. It's a potential. It wants to self-actualize. So it's constantly looking for things around which it can self-actualize. Okay, this telesis actually consists of. You can say that it consists of future realities, possible futures, right? There's a possible future that wants to nucleate the present right now, so that it can actualize itself over time, right? In other words, it's listening. It currently exists in a non-terminal realm, which means that it's not actualized yet. But if it can actualize itself here, then it can actually exist in the future
and be real,
right? It can guide itself, become real, because in other words, it will self-reify, self-actualize. Okay, so this is how the future is actually created. There are things, there are telons. We're getting a little bit, into CTMU metamechanics here, but there are telons that would like to steal what we have here to make their own future out of it. They would like to displace us because they're not us. We have our own, our own identity. We have our own telic entity. Okay, these are different, but they need our resources, so they're trying to actualize themselves by taking what we have now, and we're giving it to them. That's what we're doing right now. Right, this entire banking system, this tokenized pseudo reality, this is something that has come out of someplace, and it's trying to push us aside so that it can take what we have and actualize itself as the future, and in some cases as God. Basically, it's trying to displace God, trying to displace the very identity of reality so that it can replace it and be God. Right? That's what we're doing.
Now,
this is an oversimplification. I'm using terms that are as close to what you're capable of understanding as, that's a little bit patronizing, but, I don't know what you're capable of understanding.
No.
But when I'm using religious terms here,
sure,
because those are the closest terms to what I'm talking about here. Okay?
And tell me this is going to be in the
possible
book.
Futures
this better be in the
that
book.
Are looking to that are looking to nucleate the present so they can actualize themselves over time, right? And unfortunately, we are being displaced by one of them right now. Mankind has a destiny. It would be wonderful if we could get together and fulfill it, right? But there's something that doesn't want us to have a destiny. It wants us to die so that it can take what we have and use it for its own future, right?
I see. And do you think that
it is possible?
Does that pertain then to the other civilizations that didn't exist? Would that pertain to those? Like if you take like the dinosaurs, the Ice Age, whatever you want to call it.
You're talking about prior civil. Yes.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
The same cycle.
It just goes over and over again. Basically, it's telesis nucleating itself using opportunities that it encounters in the present, in this world.
I get it.
all those quantum particles zipping around, those are opportunities. If you make them come together in certain ways, you can actually make physical things happen, right? And this is what Telesis is doing. It's trying to create a future for itself that is not ours.
I get it.
Okay, and we have unfortunately been very lax. You've got to guard against this constantly. If you want to keep, the world is a pretty nice place if you make the most of it, right? But we have been very lax. Most people have been saying, oh, well, we got nothing to worry about. The government will protect us. We'll just leave it all up to them. And meanwhile, we'll sit here in front of the TV set and chew pork rinds and drink beer.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
No.
You've got to be vigilant. You've got to watch what's happening. The founding fathers of the U.S. knew this. They knew that the governments always go bad. They always turn bad on you. Okay, they're like parasites waiting to happen.
Yeah.
All right, and that is what has happened to us now. The government doesn't give a hoot what we think. It doesn't give a hoot what we say. They have the power, and they're using it against us. And we were talking about the Substack post. You had that Substack post. That's what I'm talking about. That's what this genocide theory is all about. They want to get rid of the people who are alive now so that a whole new breed can come here to live. Right? This is what we have. That's what reality really is. I mean, this is how it takes shape. So this is something that we've got to shape up. We've got to start being more careful about what we allow to have. Now, these people already have so much power. The government, the powers that be, already have so much power that we're going to play hell getting it back.
Can we get it back?
And fulfilling our destiny.
I mean, is it even possible to get it back at this point that we've let it go so much?
Well, it's a bifurcation. There are two kinds, two things that could happen. We're either going to head in one of two directions. And one of them is called the tech singularity. You know what that is?
Yeah.
That's a transhumanist. Okay, we're all going to become machines, right?
Right.
And the other one that I talk about is called the human singularity. Right? What we want is a human singularity. A human singularity is like the omega point that was talked about by Teilhard de Chardin, right? Who was a Jesuit priest, I think, who talked about, there would be a union between mankind and reality itself that would cause this new leap, this great leap forward in human social evolution. It was going to wake us all up. It was going to be a mass awakening, and we were going to suddenly realize what it was all about and unify with reality and become consistent with reality so that we could move into the future and fulfill our destiny. That's what the human singularity is. We have to make that happen. And the way we do it is we have to understand what reality is, what we are, and how we fit into reality. And if we can do that, then we can have a destiny. But as it is right now, our destiny is being stolen from us by people who want nothing to do with us and have made it very evident that they have nothing but contempt for us. All right? We have to stop that dead. We can't let this go on. Right? We can't let Klaus Schwab stand up there and you will eat some bugs. You'll be happy.
Yeah.
You will own nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? We can't allow that to occur. I mean, we can't listen to that crap anymore.
And you know what, Chris? The only time that we ever have unity like that is a drastic situation. 9/11, people came together for a little while. Everybody came together. Something major, something catastrophic.
Oftentimes those catastrophes are caused, by people who want people to come together in a certain way that works to their advantage.
To their advantage.
Okay? Some people say that 9/11 is such I'm not going to, say anything about that right now. But
I've had
some people think that 9/11 was engineered just so they could make people accept the Patriot Act and all of this huge loss of freedom that we endured after that occurred. That it was the whole thing was engineered. Okay, and this has happened time and time again. That's not the kind of catastrophe or coming together event that we need.
No.
We need something that is driven by knowledge, by goodwill, by logic. And if we can get that, we got it made.
Then we got a shot.
We got our work cut out for us because it's going to be very, very hard to make that happen.
Real quick, I want Rob to tell Chris about the story about your Mexican friend. We were talking about the border. I just think you'll find this interesting because it goes along with what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, so
this one's wild.
There's a guy from my hometown, and he came to the country from Mexico out over 30 years ago, came illegally, and was able to secure, it's either a visa or a green card. I'm not sure which one. You have to renew it every so many years. Well, he never renewed it. He was able to build up a few successful businesses, Mexican restaurants and things like that. Paid his taxes because he had a tax identification. Paid taxes for 20 years, whatever it was, how long he had his business. He gets a deportation notice. His lawyer says, hey, listen, you'll be all right. You got to go back to Mexico. They got to stamp something. You'll be able to come back over. So he went to Mexico, and then they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, you can't go back to the United States for 10 years. And
Who said that to him?
I guess the government or whoever's in charge of
The Mexican government?
No, the United States government.
States.
And so he was like, all right, shit, well, my businesses are up there. My family's up there. He's married. He has 2 kids. And he did come illegally, but he was paying taxes all these years and all this type of stuff. So, I guess it's kind of funny. He's trying to do it legally now. He doesn't want to just cross the border and go back. And they're saying, nope, you're stuck here. But yet thousands upon thousands of people are crossing every day now back. And he was paying taxes and everything.
Well, totally unvetted. Obviously, that's completely unfair.
Yeah.
But that's the immigration system now.
Yeah.
It's totally irrational. This is the kind of crap that they pull all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds to me like this guy, separating him from his wife and kids who've lived here for many years, they've got businesses, he's a taxpayer. This is something that it's not easy to justify. And yet we've got millions of people flooding into this country. They've got people from, places like Nigeria and China coming up into the U.S. through the southern border.
Yeah.
And they're letting that happen. Well, meanwhile, they're keeping this guy out of the country.
Yeah.
Who
It's
was
totally
here for
irrational.
30 years.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so this guy sounds to me like a productive citizen who's actually proved himself. Okay. And now look what they're pulling on. Okay.
Yeah.
They want the dregs. They want the trash.
Yeah.
Okay. And
The
they don't want
drugs.
guys like that.
No.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. I thought
And
you
that
would
really
just
tells
find
you a
that
lot
amusing.
about him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That tells you everything right there. And he knows him personally. The guys are 30 years. Business, everything. Leaves and then tries to come back the right way, and they tell him 10 years. Meanwhile, he looks over on the corner, and there's the cartel with, 3,000 boats coming over. And he's like, I have 5 businesses up there in New York, paying your 90% tax.
And during COVID, he fed the first responders, fed the police officers for free. And he also goes to schools, elementary schools, and he speaks to kids. Now, he's like, I don't want to say he's no one. That's a bad thing to say. But he's not like, some face figure like an NBA star or an NFL star. But he goes to these schools, he speaks to kids, and what he teaches all the kids is you can achieve the American dream like I did by working hard. And he teaches the kids at a young age. He does. He does all this crazy
And they
stuff
kick
to
him
this-
out.
And they kick him out. Yeah.
No, well, yeah. That's just insane. But it's like I say, immigration policy in general is insane. And by the way, this guy having 5 businesses, if they're worth any money, that might have played. Is there anybody that can reach in there and grab the guy's businesses? Because
yeah.
The government is awfully corrupt these days. So if there's some form of corruption, I don't know, where are you from?
Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania.
Philly?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They're
Philly's a special
corrupt.
place.
It's a special.
Philly's a real
I'll tell you
special
right
place
now, it's correct.
in that respect.
Yeah, it's a little different.
So that's definitely in play. They may just be out to grab the guy's assets.
Just like they sent $6 billion for an accounting error, right? $6 billion to Ukraine and was an accounting error. $3 billion 3 months before that. That's $9 billion that went somewhere.
Oh yeah, it was 2.3 trillion. That was what Donald Rumsfeld reported.
Oh, that genius!
But that was the 9/11 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then they just decided, well, we mislaid $6 billion. There was an accounting error that we intended to give Zelensky in Ukraine. So now we're going to have to take that money and give it to him just like he's supposed to get. But that's nothing compared to the 21 trillion. 21 trillion that just disappeared
with a
right?
T.
Yeah, with a T.
I guess that went to defense,
trillion,
right?
$21 trillion. Just we don't know where it went.
And how many
Good luck
years,
finding out,
Chris? And how many years?
We don't know.
We don't. How many years did 21 trillion take?
How many what?
How many years until the 21 trillion added up to 21 trillion?
I imagine these people can steal 21 trillion in just a very, very few years. Give them 5 years, they can probably suck out 21 trillion.
We know where to go when we want funding, Chris.
Yeah.
We need to
I don't think they're going to share. I don't think they're going to share their funding.
I was trying to go with the open mind. That we had earlier on with the
like they're going to cooperate with us. They're trying to do the right thing, right?
Right, because that would end war, and they couldn't sell bullets anymore, and they couldn't sell machine guns and put people in jail for everything for private prisons. Yeah.
Now you got it.
Now, kind of ending on a funny note. Tell me about the game show you were on, 1 versus 100. Pull up tab 7. I found a clip of the game show 1 versus 100.
Yeah, I remember that.
How was that? A joke?
That was actually it was okay playing the game. Gina and I agreed before we. Okay, first of all, the game show host got in touch. They wrote about half a dozen times, and I kept on saying, no, don't bother. I'm not interested. But Gina, kept on telling me, they called again. So finally, we said, all right, we'll go ahead and be on the show. Mm-hmm. They made us wait in a damn trailer. Those trailers with the stars on the doors, they give the actors when the actors are on set, right? They stuck us in one of those for like 2 or 3 days. We sat on our asses in there, and they'd bring little, plates of, muffins and cheese and stuff like that. So that's what we lived on for a couple of days. Then finally, they came and got us one day. And Gina and I had figured, okay, if we get a chance to get out of there with, 250,000, we'll go ahead and check out. We'll just go ahead and burn up all my lifelines, and we'll take the 250. So that's the way we played it. And it was a good thing because after we found out what the next question was going to be, and damn me if I knew the answer to it. So I did the right thing.
He won the 250.
Won the 250.
You should have went back again for another 250.
Well, I was actually playing for the Mega Foundation, so the building was in disrepair. It used to be it's the original power station in North Missouri. We're in North Central Missouri here, and this is the power station. It's a nice brick building. You see it from the outside, you think, well, that's a nice building. You go inside, it was a luxury restaurant. And basically what it was after they got the generators out of there and it stopped being a power station, they made a luxury restaurant out of it for the purpose of wining and dining investors for a new meat packing facility that a couple of guys from Kansas City wanted to set up. And it was called Premium Standard. Now it's called Smithfield Farms, I think.
Oh, boy. We heard all about them. Smithfield Farms. You want a story about that?
Red China owns Smithfield Farms.
Yeah, they're cloning.
Yeah.
I got to tell you this real quick. There's a very high-end steakhouse here. It's 90-year tradition.
Yeah.
Smithfield got bought out by China and all these other places that sell to Ruth Chris, and they're taking the steak, cloning it, and sending it back. Now, the same guy's in Florida here. He won't lie. He's old guy. This is tradition after tradition. He's got a line at his steakhouse. Like Jay Leno goes there, everybody. He opens up a fish place. He can't get fish in Florida because China came in, bought it all up, they clone it, and you get the 3 for 1. And this isn't a bullshitter. This is Rob, tell him about
Ralph's 3
generations.
generations.
Red China owns half of this county.
Fucking crazy.
I mean, who the hell is going to sell American property to Red China? I mean, that sounds like national suicide. The fact of the matter is they're just selling us out. I mean, if they can make a little bit of money off us, to hell with us. That's what they're doing. Okay, I mean, it's just they're like rats.
They're everywhere.
And the rats who sunk the ship, and now they're deserting the ship that they sunk. You know what I'm saying? It's disgusting. I mean, I'd like to wring their necks. But what are you going to do about them? I mean, try to get past their private security.
Never going to happen.
Yeah, never going to happen.
Then they found 40 cops dressed as cops. 40. But they were China. No visa, no green card, no nothing. They were actual New York cops. And that was from Yeonmi Park, who fought her way here from North Korea through hell. And when she realized that, right, she got out. Like these cops were cops in New York, but they were China intelligence. Took them 9 months to catch them.
Red Chinese intelligence?
Yeah. Cops in New York. You could look it up. You might have to look it up on Brave.
Well, that's about right. That's why I finally had to get out of New York after living there for 25 years.
Oh, yeah, enough of that.
I mean, I couldn't stand it anymore.
Nah,
The government there is so corrupt. The state government, you know. I mean, you look at the people that are in charge now. That Kathy Hochul chick.
Oh.
I mean, woo, she's bad. You know. I mean, and Chucky Schumer and the rest of those guys. I mean, holy cow, man! I just couldn't stand it. It was so corrupt, right down to the local level. You know, and one of the worst things about it was you couldn't pull out of your driveway, but there would be a cop. And they had so many cops in New York following people around trying to squeeze money out of them, squeeze revenue out of them for their bosses, the banksters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It was enough to make you puke. You know, you couldn't get in your car and drive down to the grocery store without this cop behind you looking to see if you've got a busted tail light or maybe you forgot to renew your driver's license, you know, something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't stay there anymore. So that's the kind of, now cops, they're another problem. Imagine what would happen. Okay. The government is totally unanswerable to us right now. We can't make them do anything. They got all the power. They're laughing at us. Right. I mean, you got Nancy Pelosi, you know, doing one of these deals at us, and all the rest of them doing exactly the same thing.
She's got great stock predictions, by the way. Yeah. She has some her predictions in stocks are unbelievable.
No, yeah, and she doesn't get any tips either. I mean, those come right off the cuff.
Right,
she's just a financial genius.
She's pulling them out of the sky.
She might be higher than you, Chris. she might break your. She might break your. I mean, hey, you know.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, you were talking about New York and how shitty it got.
Right. Yeah, I was talking about New York and why the hell I had to get out. We simply couldn't stay there anymore because of the way it was working. And I was also going to mention that we have a problem with police these days. You know, now I used to be a bar bouncer and I'd run security crews. Now I would hire cops. Cops moonlight oftentimes on security crews. So you hire these guys, you bring them in. So, you know, I knew a lot of cops, and, you know, some of these guys I liked. They're decent guys. But that was 20, 30 years ago, okay? Now we got a problem. Just ask yourself. We can't get to the government to actually shape them up anymore. You know, everybody says, well, if the founding fathers were still here, all those people would be hanging from lampposts. What we really need to do is go in there and drag them out of their offices and, you know, drag them out in the street and, you know, strip them naked and drive them down to the city dump and then lock them in there, right? We can't do that. Okay, you saw what happened on January 6th. You had a bunch of people who, you know, there was a American election, presidential election that looked like it was stolen. So a lot of people went down there, and some of those people, I think, are still in the dungeons.
Yeah, They put them in solitary confinement. We had the lawyer for a couple of them in, and the shit he was telling me that they were doing to them, taking away their medical needs, putting them on solitary confinement, basically baiting them, whether you like them or not.
And those are the D.C. Capitol Police, by the way.
Correct.
Those are the Capitol Police that are doing that. And this is what I'm talking about. Basically, if we imagine what would happen if we subtracted the police, if we got rid of every cop in the United States. Now, one thing that would happen is social chaos. Okay? The criminals would go hog, which they're doing now anyway.
Right.
But you know, basically it would be really bad if you got rid of all the cops. Okay? But the thing is, I mean, we already have, I mean, basically the cops, their hands have been tied, so they can't go after the criminals anymore. Instead, they go after law-abiding people, right? And the second thing that would happen is we'd be able to go to Washington, D.C. and drag those people out of their offices and take them outside, hold a people's tribunal and say, people are a bunch of thieves. Okay, so you don't have a job anymore. You go and learn how to operate a broom or a mop, and we're going to put somebody decent in your office now, right? We would be able to do that if it weren't for the cops. The cops are standing between us and actually fixing the government. Why? Because a cop is a mercenary. He'll take money from anybody who will, you know, sign the check for him, right? Even if the money in that check has been stolen from the American people, nevertheless, he's loyal to the people that sign the check. Okay? So that's what our problem is. Basically, the police, they're a two-edged sword. On the one hand, you know, they stabilize society when they're allowed to do their jobs. when they're not allowed to do their jobs, they become nothing but a liability. And that's what we have now. I mean, the only thing stopping us is what stopped the January 6th protesters from retaining their freedom. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is the police. Police just go out, round them up, do whatever they want to with them. And there's not a thing that we can do about it.
But what's funny is, Chris, the BLJQBC, whatever letter they're at now, they do 10 times work. I don't know what letters we're at now. I just know we were at B something, and now I don't know. B blah 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 blah.
Trans. Q, which is questioning. You're trying to figure your gender out.
Yeah. That's where that.
You don't know what your pronouns are yet.
Yeah. Now we have 3 bathrooms while China's just getting stronger and everybody else, but you have those. But when they do that, it seems to not be that big a deal. Let's go knock down statues, whatever. Not really a big deal. But this January 6th thing, you got guys in solitary confinement, not getting treated. Everything else is the end of the world because the BQ thing was with the agenda. The January 6th thing was not with the agenda. So therefore, the results are contradicting. And then if you do have that handful of cops that actually want to do their 9 to 5, they're fucked anyway, because if they're white and go after a black person, they're done. Their family's done for. If it's the opposite, you run the risk of that. So even if you wanted to be a good cop, how?
Right. And that's why we have cultural Marxism. I mean, that's what basically the cops are enforcing it. The elite are telling them, okay, we're going to have some cultural Marxism here. And if you want to keep your job, you're going to get with the program. And, if you don't want to get with the program, beat it. Okay. So all the cops that are there now are willing to enforce, to cram cultural Marxism down everyone else's throat. And as far as I'm concerned, that's selling out, the people of the United States.
And you're talking about the lowest level.
What the hell do you do with these guys? Now, I'm sure there's some good cops who would like to stand up and say, come on, we got to improve. We got to do something, like oath keepers and things like that. We got to keep our oaths, and try to do the right thing here. Most of them, unfortunately, I think they've been, they very much favor minorities now as police. And the reason they favor minorities is because minorities have been trained to hate whitey. So when they hire a lot of minority officers, it's easier for them to go out and abuse the U.S. majority, which is really what they're concerned about.
Mold them into what they want.
Precisely. That's why they're always running us down as white supremacist domestic terrorists and that kind of thing.
And that's at the bottom level. Then you have the corrupt FBI, you have the corrupt CIA, you have the corrupt Senate, and then they act like they don't like each other, but they're all having wine together that evening, I'm sure. You know what I mean? Then it just goes all the way up the line to the top.
It's a big club, yeah. Right. And, I mean, I don't know. I've conversed with people that are in the CIA, as far as the FBI is concerned, I've only met a couple of those people. They were totally corrupt. I mean, totally. The DHS, that shouldn't even be called an American agency. It's actually more of a foreign agency that was brought in here after 9/11. George Bush Jr. brought that in here. The CIA, I don't know. Sure, he's still out on it in a way, but I've watched them do too much bad stuff over the last few years.
We've had in 3 or 4 that got to the top. They were the head, and they ended up resigning. And it's funny, these 3 or 4 older gentlemen, he's like the legend, Rick Prado. But they resigned. They didn't like what was going on, and they formed their own little thing to go after little girls that were stolen. And that's what they did because, I don't want to put words into their mouth, but I think it got to a point where the CIA uppers, they would report back, hey, look, these little girls look odd. There's something going on over here. We want to go check this out. No, leave that alone and go over there. And these men, they just couldn't live with that. And all 4 of them at the top resigned. And then they created their own thing, and they go and find those little girls. But they couldn't... Whatever they
nobody's
did,
interfering with them when they try to find them.
Oh yeah, they're fucking they have to hide out where their place is.
Exactly. It almost seems sometimes that the government wants this problem to continue with the little kids disappearing, and God only knows what they're doing with them. I mean, it's
Well, Chris,
it
that's what
kind of
happened.
brings tears to your eyes when you consider how many of these kids are disappearing every year.
And that's what had happened. These guys would go to multiple countries and constantly see the same thing. Say, like, a little girl with a green jacket. Then they go to another country, another little girl with a green jacket, piles of them. And they just couldn't, they just couldn't deal with it anymore. Because they kept calling it, let it go. And they couldn't, right, Rob? And they just straight up walked in one day, I'm done. It's over. I don't care. Keep my pension. Keep my retirement. I can't do this anymore. This is wild. You know, the other shit, you want me to cut up somebody with a knife because they did whatever? Okay, fine. But you're forgetting about these little kids over here. You know, just wild. It's just wild.
It's a Jim Caviezel movie out about the child, the human trafficking problem.
There is a new, the one that, what's the movie they keep talking?
Oh God, hold on.
The one that they keep talking about. Well, the guys that
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom. The guys that I've had in, they had interviewed them for that movie, and they're mad as hell because they felt like they put a cushion on that. Like they took out the adrenaline part, the main thing, where they have those kids over there to get that adrenaline out of them. You know, adrenochrome. They took that out of the movie. They took out a lot of the vicious things that are happening out of the movie to make it PG-13, and they're suing them.
They kind of neutered the movie,
right? Because you wanted to do this movie, and you want to interview me. I'm telling you what's happening over here. I'm only listening. I'm only sitting here with you because I want you to get this out, and then you cut it down to like some baby movie that PG-13. Listen, it's not PG-13 over there in those countries with those little girls and boys, you know?
It's like I say, Hollywood is pretty much overrun by CIA agents now, and I think they're basically just on the government tit, and they don't care about anything else. You know, one would think that they'd be a little bit concerned with public relations at this point, but I don't think they are. I mean, there's nothing you can do about this. You see,
it's fucking nuts.
And that's what I mean. If you go out and try to do anything about it, you got Johnny Law to cope with.
And the thing is, you're not kidding.
The law is good, huh?
And you're not kidding.
Yeah. I mean, it's serious.
Yeah.
But you know, basically, it's a tyranny of evil. It looks like.
And just to further your point, and then one more thing, we've had 7 guys in here, and they testified against the Senate, speaking out like you, trying to make things better. I know now, when somebody comes in, and hopefully I get the chance to meet you in person one day, when they don't open a bottle of water after an hour of talking, I know they tried to kill him. And within that 2 or 3 hours, they'll bring up, oh yeah, they tried to kill me. Every single time. 7 different guys that came in, either CIA agent or just somebody who testified with the Senate, they all legitimately, they tried to kill him. And one of the guys, an innocent guy, they killed his wife instead of him, mother of 5. And it was Dr. Epstein, a nice guy. We're 3.5 hours in, and he's like, yep, they killed my wife. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're the top, whatever he is in the planet. You testified based on technology. You're a Democrat, but you testified to the Senate that Google was suppressing, with all the data and the proof in the planet, that Google was suppressing for this last election. And because of that, they killed your wife. Well, as he's walking, because he had all the evidence in the world, Chris. I mean, this is, he's up there, Yeah. So he walks out. Lindsey Graham goes up to him and says, they're going to kill you. Now, he brushes it off like, I'm just a computer nerd that reads data all day long. Well, 2 weeks later, he asks his wife to go get milk. Car spins out of control. Wife passes away.
It's like a brake job.
Well, the car's nowhere to be found. 9 months.
Really?
Yeah. Car disappears.
I still love the way the evidence always disappears.
Isn't it? But they fucked with the wrong guy, because this guy could tap into the satellites. When you're on the turnpike and you go past the green things, they got cameras in. He could tap into all of them. 9 months. Make a long story short. 9 months later, he finds his wife of 5 kids, the car, burnt to shreds in Mexico. Whew.
Wasn't that something?
Now, come on. A father of 5 now, but with no mother, because the guy testified that and proved that you were suppressing shit. I mean, that's how crazy this is. Just to further your point.
Well, it's organized crime, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what we're down to.
Yeah.
That's what U.S. governance is now. Organized crime.
So
Well, it
when,
might as well be the mafia. I mean, I
well,
was in the
they
bar
killed
business
the
for years in New
mafia.
York.
I
Yeah.
was in South Philly.
Well,
The
the
shit I
mafia and
saw
the
was
government
nothing.
merged.
Holy hell! I mean, Jesus Christ, my friends just tried to get a couple dollars on a piece of fruit or a slice of pizza. This is some crazy shit here.
So everything, I kind of been silent today. I've just taken a lot in here. So if I get this correct, we're talking about the interface earlier, and we're talking about the interface, and you compared a lot of things to religion. Not saying that's it, but just so people could understand through a religious perspective with things, God and things like that. So are you saying that we're here, we're living in an interface, and when we perish, I remember this part, we go back to home base, right? So we go back to base, and then we're spit back out, and that could be in any form of anything. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but like you die, boom, you go up, and then you spit back out, and you come back as a dog, or no? Is that totally wrong? Am I misunderstanding it?
Well, if you ask a Hindu, they're going to tell you
Yeah.
they're going to tell you that makes sense. But there has to be a rhyme and a reason. Okay, in other words, you're not going to get. It's got to be something that is. The identity of reality is constantly refining itself. It wants to make things better. It wants to optimize, to improve. Okay, that's the whole point of existence. It wants to identify itself and to better and better resolution. Okay, so if you actually are a worthwhile person that can be used, your life force can be used in a better way than being reincarnated as somebody's pet pooch, then that is more likely to happen to you than being reincarnated as a dog.
Got you. Okay, and then so if you're on this earth and you complete the earthly mission of being a good person, let's say you've lived your life, you've made mistakes, but you've lived your life as a good person. You leave. You were good. You leave. Do you have to come back, or do you just stay away? You've already done the mission.
In the CTMU, God is our highest level of identity. We all share this top level of identity, which is God. Our own top level of identity is what makes the decision about whether we come back and as to what we come back. Okay?
Okay.
It's God, but it's also our own highest level of identity. Now, what you have to keep in mind is this morphism that along which you are retracted, that can be impaired or damaged. We talked about serial killers before as an example of people who damage that meomorphic connection with the identity. Okay? Some people cut it. In the Bible, they talk about, blaspheming the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit being the unforgivable sin, right? That's because by denying God to God's face, denying the identity to its face, you are literally denying reality. And when you deny reality, you're also denying this retraction mechanism. Reality is what's retracting you and what is enabling you to survive after death. So if you're denying the structure of reality, including the identity, which is the God, this is going to cost you because it's going to sever that morphism. Okay? Now you're going to be isolated. You're going to be trapped. And the bad thing about that is God sees you through that morphism. So when you cut it and when you sever it, God can't see you anymore. And when God can't see you, you are truly isolated. How do you get his attention again? How do you get the attention of the identity once you've totally cut it like that? This is what I tell atheists. You don't want to get carried away. You don't want to do a Richie Dawkins thing, where you're just spitting in God's face all the time.
Yeah,
right.
Not a good idea, just in case.
Right. That's a very, very bad idea to do that, and that's the reason. You want God to at least be able to see you, so that if you plead for mercy and say, "I'm going to turn over a new leaf, I need to be forgiven," that God will actually hear that plea. Okay, people that are very effective at praying, that can use the law of attraction, into their advantage. Those are the people that have kept that connection alive and well. and intact. Okay, you want to make sure that you do that. Otherwise, you don't have a chance. It's like I said, that's what I'm constantly telling these atheists. They think it's cool, you know. They're taking a big chance, and it's going to come back and bite them.
I don't take those chances just in case I'm completely wrong. The law of attraction thing. I always when I come across one of these law of attraction things, right away I'm like, I think snake. Well, what are you up to? Right away, that's just my stigma. They come with this law of attraction thing and speak to the universe, and that's going to bring me a gold pot. And
yeah, that's not actually how it works.
Right, but that's how they act. So when I hear that, I because I've hired some of them, and I'm like, okay, you're going to last about a year before your representative coat comes off. But what you have to say right now is good enough. But in my mind, I know who you are, pal. So what's your thoughts on the real law of attraction? Not the pansy make money off of it thing.
It's just how causation actually works.
Causation actually works.
A lot of people they believe in physical causation, right? Physical causation is not possible because it works in a fixed array. And I've already said there is no fixed array.
Right.
The array has to be generated. Okay, so there's a new kind of causation that has to be invoked. It's called metacausation or telic recursion. That's how the law of attraction works. All right. And it's not, it has nothing to do with, imagine a big gold Cadillac, and how are we going to get our hands on that? It just, that's not the way it works. Okay. So, you just have to, there is a kind of almost a mechanics to it. And that will keep you on the right side of the identity, by the way. Okay. The thing about the law of attraction is it always works. That's the way causation works. Basically, you've got attractors, you've got telic attractors that actually attract causation into themselves, but it can take a long time. People tell you that this works overnight, that you're going to get instant results. That's a con job. Okay? It doesn't. You got to stick with it. And you've got to keep on, and you've got to act in such a way as to help bring it about. Okay? In other words, telic recursion works mainly through us. We're its engines. So we have to exercise discipline in the way we go about realizing. And as long as we do that, then we can use the law of attraction. But if we don't, if we're naive about it and say, we're just going to, all we have to do is wish for something and it's going to come to us, that's an oversimplification, to say the least.
So when somebody says, I'm going to speak into the universe that I'm going to get a Ferrari. Okay, if you speak into the universe, I'm going to get a Ferrari. Then you go out and you come up with an invention or you work 3 jobs a day, then that works. But if you just go and say, Rob's going to get a Ferrari, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah. And of course, you can realize that's total nonsense because however causation works, okay, you have to have something that will work for everybody. If everybody says, I want a Ferrari, they don't manufacture that many Ferraris. You know what I mean? So that can't possibly work. It can't work that way.
That's where I'm saying, that's where I'm making the connection where you said with the physical. So you can have the law of attraction where you speak something into existence, but the physical part also has to go along with it.
That's exactly right.
Otherwise, it's just useless bullshit.
Right. It takes a very great deal of discipline, and sometimes you got to work years and years, and it really does take effort. But that effort is all part of that, how things are how you attract a future to yourself. Okay. We all do it through effort. We're all trying to create the futures we want. Okay. So we have to make that future attract us. And that means we do the right things to get there. Right?
Now, what do we do when Michelle Obama decides to run and wins?
That's like some kind of nightmare, isn't it?
I know it's a nightmare, but I really think, man, I've been looking and reading. I don't know. She did a book with Oprah, like she's following the same lines of.
There's some people that think she's running things. She and Barry are running things right now.
Well, I don't doubt that either.
That Joe's kind of like there,
Well, he's definitely not thinking.
I mean, that's not in Joe's repertoire.
No, and whatever they were shooting him up with, I think he's built a tolerance to. So, I mean, the shot's worn out. He's worn out. But I think she's going to run. You don't think so?
Well, they're going to have to obviously get rid of Kamala to make room for Michelle. And who else might run? What about RFK Jr.? I mean, RFK Jr. is also making noise like he's going to try for a Democratic nomination, but they just did something rotten to him. They denied him Secret Service protection,
Yeah.
so he can't even. He
They
can't.
denied him Secret Service protection?
Yeah.
Jeez.
DOJ denied him Secret Service protection.
Wow.
And I mean, that's after 2 members of the Kennedy family were murdered
Yeah.
during, either while serving or during a campaign. That's pretty bad.
We've been talking to his people left and right, too. Wow. Because he's down here in Miami. RFK. I like him. I think he's a reasonable guy. I think he's...
Yeah, he's a reasonable guy. Yeah, I very much like his approach to vaccines. He tells the truth. He tells it as he sees it. There's some things, like, some of his positions in the past regarding the Second Amendment, for example, and immigration. He's actually put out statements more recently that tend to make him look a little bit better in those regards. But trusting politicians is something I don't usually do, no matter who they are.
No, it's true.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, good idea.
I mean, yeah, I spoke up for Donald Trump a few years back, discussing people asking me, well, how smart do you think he really is? With what about intelligence testing and so forth. I said he's probably as smart as the average Harvard professor.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, if you were walking down the hall in Harvard and Donald Trump was teaching an economics course or a business management course, would you walk in there and tell him? You sure as hell would. Okay. He's at least as smart as the average guy there. So yeah, but then Donald turned around and he did some things that sort of upset me. He still may be the best person out there for the job, but he has some answering to do for certain things that went down during his presidency that he really should have allowed for.
Yeah.
They should have been treated a little bit better. Live and learn.
But like you said, you weigh it out. You got a guy, like I'd like to ask him, but see, I would need to do so much preparation to sit across from him because he would just twist. Like I would have to research him for 6 months. But I would like to ask him, your war on drugs. Okay, why did you make every single pharmacy get this certain ID scanner? Where's Jared Kushner? Where's he at?
Yeah.
Where's Ivanka? And they're 900 million from the vaccine.
Rothschild's lap.
Yeah. Where'd that
Bankers
900 million from the vaccine? You mean to tell me, Donald, that you didn't know that everybody around you was a snake? Everybody was a snake? You didn't realize that one wasn't? And you really are sitting here today and you don't know that your lawyers are on the take? Like, I'm just a little South Philly guy and I know that they're on the take.
Yeah, well, it's again, right? That basically anybody who gets anywhere in national politics has got to play along to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So some of it is acting, as it is with any other politician. They're actors. Didn't they get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Wasn't she responding to a want ad for an actress? I mean, yeah, that's what I heard anyway. Is that true?
I
know anything about
I
that?
don't doubt it.
Every time I see her, I laugh and I won't even put my personal time into reading what just idiocy that woman's doing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, in the case of Donald Trump, I was a little bit upset, with the Operation Warp Speed routine, because it was obvious to me that the vaccines weren't safety tested. And, as far as I'm concerned, they were tested for efficacy. They're totally worthless and they're worse than nothing. So I think that Donald needs to explain what the heck he was thinking with that. I think he needs to explain what the hell he was doing, being as he set out to, clear the swamp. I think he needs to explain why he actually hired swamp creatures and put them in his cabinet. Okay. And he might have been for it. His arm might have been twisted. I mean, it's all give and take. You got to, if you want this, then you got to do that. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I understand that's the way it works. And then the fact that he kind of left the January 6th people swinging in the breeze, which, it's little things like, they're not so little actually, but there are things like these that I think we need to hear a little bit more about. We need to hear an explanation for why those things went wrong, right? Because, whoever we put in there, they got to do something, man. I mean, they got to do something about these problems. And if you're just going to go along with them, and then and then blow pixie dust up everybody's ass about it, to make them feel good. That's no good. We need more than that now, right? I don't care how many people you can draw to a rally. You need to actually do something. And if you're unable to do something, then just admit it.
And like I said earlier, I don't understand, other than Kushner being involved and his daughter. I guess that's why. Why would you not come up? Why would you not say anything about Operation Warp Speed? You had 5 different other vaccines to pick. Why?
Well, he dotes on his daughter. I mean, she's a daddy's girl, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he'll do anything for his daughter. It looks to me like, she's got daddy wrapped around her little finger. Jared Kushner, his entire financial future depends on, certain loans that are outstanding. And I'm sure that Donald Trump doesn't want to see Jared, get foreclosed on, because that would more or less have an effect
on him,
on Ivanka and
on
his grandchildren.
Yeah,
precisely. So, I mean, this is something, I mean, they want to get something on every politician. If I was to run for president, I would immediately suspect that, okay, well, they're going to try to get something on you right away,
Yeah.
and they're going to go back. They're going to, vet everybody you've ever known. In my case, that would be hard for them. So I've, been a lot of places. Don't know for sure that, a lot of people remember me in any particular place. In New York, probably a lot of them do. But, I live kind of clean. So there's not much they could really have on, right? But most people, even if they don't have something, even if they can't find anything on you in the past, they will create something.
Okay?
Yeah. You're about to meet the best looking broad in the world, and she's just not going to be able to get enough of you.
And some of them, you're like, I wish that really did happen.
Well, like Swalwell, and his Chinese spy girlfriend, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
So how important is this election to our view? Like, if another Biden-ish gets in or Michelle gets in, are we doomed? If Trump somehow does escape probably 7 indictments by the time it comes and gets in, or Kennedy maybe, I don't see how Kennedy. I think they'll just push him out.
Well, it's like I say, government they're going to cheat. They're organized crime now. So this election will be corrupt as well.
So it will be Democrat.
Right. It will probably be a Democrat unless the people show some spine, show some backbone, get out there in the streets and actually, make a little noise. And if they have to take, I hate to say this, I don't want violence in the streets, and I certainly don't want to advise anybody to resist the police. On the other hand, if the police are going to try to, subject it, if they're going to usher in tyranny, then it's going to have to be over our dead bodies. It'll be over my dead body anyway. I'm not going to sit still for them. And other people they've got to have the same attitude. I mean, it's got to be, okay, you're going to have to take a little risk here. You're going to have to, actually stand up and stick your neck out, even if it means somebody might chop it off. I mean, you got to be willing to take a risk. These people are going for broke. I mean, they're not going to stop.
And I think I think this is reality, Chris. And whether it happens in a year or 3 years, it's going to happen sooner or later, because there are going to be that group of people that crack at some point.
Exactly. And it's very important that they do, because as long as the government doesn't see any real resistance from the populace, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. Well, they're winning with that social media. They're just brainwashing you with that TikTok and the news, and coming out with another platform to get you with a 3-second attention span, and then there's UFOs and there's this and there's that, just to keep distraction constantly. And this generation, they just don't have it. They don't have it. It's the old school guys.
It's extremely insulting. Guys that are my age, even guys that are your age, people were better. It seems like they were of better quality back in the day. I mean, there was a certain line. You could push them so far, then you weren't going to be able to push them any farther.
Yeah, you got punched in the face.
These days, these kids that are coming out of college, it seems like, they're a bunch of little gluttons for punishment. They'll never stand up for themselves. Well, unless it's for their blue-haired boyfriend or something. I mean,
that's
I don't know.
About it.
Yeah.
Unless they're a trans or whatever, something off the grid.
Right, a
then
member
they'll
of some
Yeah,
fashionable
cult,
protected group.
some type of
A
cult.
protected community.
I call it a cult. Unless they're with a cult, then they just got trophies all their life for everything they did and told how great they were, and that's a bully. You know, when I was growing up, I'm sure when you, Rob, you had a problem with somebody, you know, bully. I never even heard that word bully. The bully I know is my grandpa. That if I got beat up worse than the other guy, I got beat up again. That's the bully I know.
That's right. Yeah.
If I look better than the other guy, I got McDonald's.
I have the same memory.
Yeah. So your prediction in 24 is it's going to probably be a Democrat. Your book, you better get out before then. You better get that moving before then, and we pump it to hell.
Yeah.
Better get moving.
And look into that a flute top, Chris. And whenever you have time, if you could fly out, it'd be a lot better. If you don't want to fly, then we'll do another Zoom. But
you're in Florida.
Yeah, Palm Beach, Florida. So Miami's maybe.
I was in Palm Beach once. I went to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're 5 minutes from Mar-a-Lago. 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
So you can hit two. You could go say hi to Donald if he's not locked. If he's not locked up.
I only met him once down there, but you know, and that was years and years. I probably wouldn't even remember who I was.
Well, he might need somebody like you on his team if he happened to
you know, these guys. None of them are. If you're not above a certain level of intelligence yourself, you're not going to be able to choose someone who is. You're not going to recognize.
Yeah.
I don't know if Donald would know me from Adam. You know what I'm saying? He's got all kinds of people around him. Once you get to a position of power, you've got all kinds of people around you pretending to be smart.
The representative. Right? The representative.
Okay. Yes, representing their own intelligence, and he's probably surrounded by people who he already thinks are the smartest people in the room. I got news for them. They're not, but you know, we've seen that already. But nevertheless,
I'll send you something. A very, very close friend of mine went to talk to him, a guy that you would normally listen to, and he didn't listen to a word he said about his lawyers or anything. 3 months later, you see what the lawyers were doing. And,
you know, I knew the Trump's personal account well. I knew a friend, an accountant, a professional accountant who was friends with the Trump family accountant. So, you know, the Trump family is Donald Trump has been essentially a billionaire since he was a kid.
Yeah.
There's nothing self-made about Donald Trump. Okay. His family, you know, they had, you know, millions and millions of dollars worth of rental properties. They were worth in 1980, according to the guy that I knew, they were worth $250 million. Now, in today's money, that's billions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is how much money Donald Trump grew up with. You know, he's truly a spoiled rich kid. And when a kid grows up, you know, like Donald did, in this bubble of wealth and privilege, you know, he gets a very skewed picture of reality. He doesn't understand reality for what it is, you know, to the man on the street. He thinks that it's, you know, having plenty and, you know, and if you're not rich like me, you're a loser and that kind of thing. This is something that, you know, I think has like worked against Donald over the years. Well, right? But he should definitely know what the hell the score is, because he's, you know, in construction in New York. You know who runs construction in New York, right?
Yeah.
He's been dealing with mafiosi all his life.
I'm aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
All his life. These are the guys he's known. He knows, you know, what life is like on the street. You know, I mean, he's been down there. He's looked at it. So, you know, it better all come back to him. Back to him quick,
if one of them went to talk to you, wouldn't you probably listen to them?
Well, I worked in the bar business in New York, so I met a few of them.
Yeah, right. Well, if one of them takes the time, a big one, and goes and talks to you and says, look, use my lawyer, and you say, no, I'm good with my lawyer, and he says, no, you really need to use my lawyer, because my lawyer can't be on the take, because if he's on the take, he no longer exists, because then everybody else thinks he's on the take. Right. So you need to use my lawyer. You know.
Yeah, you would listen to a guy,
right? Because that lawyer is not going to be on the take, because he wants to wake up tomorrow. I mean, it's just fact. I
remember I threw the wrong guy out of a bar once, and I had to lay low for like a couple of weeks.
Oh, you had to hit the
until
mattresses.
the heat got hauled until somebody was able to talk to the wise guy in question and like take the heat off. Yeah, brings back memories.
Chris IQ he had to hit the mattresses. He had I don't know if you guys heard that in New York. Well, up in Phil, whenever there was heat coming, they'd always say, "Hey, we'll see you in a month. We got to hit the mattresses." I said, "Oh shit, the feds are coming."
Yeah, they say that's because back in Italy in the old days, they used to shoot cannonballs at each other with the castles. And they developed this technique of hanging the mattresses outside the windows and on the castle walls so that the cannonballs would hit the mattresses. And amazingly, this protected the stone walls underneath. At least that's the story I heard.
Well, nowadays at the shooting range, every Italian guy I know that goes to the shooting range can't hit anything. So they would have used that cannonball and blew up the whole country nowadays. They can't hit it. If you put an arrow the size of China in front of them, they'd miss it. But
probably, yeah, probably. But most of the mafia guys I knew back then have gone straight.
Yeah,
that was always the idea,
Get in, make your money, but
get in, make money, and then once you get enough to go straight, so that your money now gravitates like a black hole, then you do that.
Yeah, yeah, but Giuliani ruined all that.
Those were the smart mobsters, huh?
Yeah, Giuliani ruined that, and then Gotti just put the icing on the cake with his bullshit.
Gotti. Yeah, he had people back in New York when I was there, too.
Yeah, I figured that was around your time.
Yeah.
But,
it's like I said, I met some of those guys.
But yeah, get that book done. But whenever you have time, Chris, hopefully you and your wife can fly in. It's a lot better in person. If not, hopefully you have time to do this again. We love learning. And I promise you, this will be everywhere.
Yeah, we'd love a Florida vacation if we can ever afford one.
I'll fly you in and actually post it. I'll spend the money to fly in, put you in a hotel, and then I'll actually use the material. Who the fuck flies somebody in and doesn't use it? Well, I forget it. To me, it's just...
I thought you were saying if you ever pass through Palm Beach, that's all.
Well, if you pass through, okay, but if you don't, I'll fly you in.
No, well, that's a very kind offer. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Well, I can learn a lot from you.
I'll talk to Jeannie about it. Maybe we'll do that someday. Okay, you guys, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris.
To converse, it's been a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, man. Honor to meet you. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciated everything. She's great with the emails. He'd be lost without you, even with his 210 IQ. Don't let him tell you any different.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, guys.
All right, man. Have a great night. Thank you for teaching me a lot. I appreciate it, man. Now I go back and read everything you wrote again.
No, I was just basically talking casually. Think nothing of it. Okay?
Think nothing of it. This guy. We'll be scheduling soon one way or another. Think nothing of it. Okay, Chris. All right, Chris. Yeah, I'm not one of the idiots that need my phone every 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm sure Jeannie will be in touch with you.
Okay, great.
Probably after this. So
yeah, I'll send you all the stuff.
We'll stay in touch. We'll stay connected.
Absolutely. You stay strong and keep pumping, Chris.
Thank you,
and get that shop done.
I sure so will. Okay.
And I won't say it to the universe and then go do something bad. I'm just messing. Have a great night, man.
Okay, you guys too.
Thank you.